jubilant crowd swarms the kiosk, and amid thunderous applause, the man fires off a quick list of requests to his assistant. Her fingers trembled as she thrust the order into his palm and breathed a shaky "thank you" for his help. They explode into cheers the moment the last of their wares is sold. They slam the receipts down and start counting the cash left after slicing away the initial expenses. They freeze, eyes wide. They've just banked 1,600,000 yen. Her jaw dropped as Sure sold with eerie ease. She swore he had to be a real magician. She flushes and recoils, whispering that it's far too overblown. In a heartbeat, the scene snaps to modern Japan. Shurus materializes in a forest as a humming portal yawns open before him, a shimmering tunnel that leads straight to his room. Behind him, a shimmering magical city unfurls. Ahead, his grandmother's room stands twisted into something unrecognizable. He remembers arriving at the house his grandmother left him, and when he flung open the wardrobe beside the altar, he accidentally tumbled into a hidden passage that led straight to another world. Shush slams the door shut and tells himself it was only his imagination, leftover stress from that toxic job he used to have. He flings it open again and his jaw drops. It's all real. His grandmother had been hiding a real secret. She remembers vanishing 7 years ago. The authorities waited until those 7 years had passed to declare her dead. As kids, Shiro pestered her relentlessly about the secret, and she vowed she'd spill every hidden truth once he was grown. An elderly woman died before she could tell anyone. Beside the photograph, she'd slid a letter packed with clues. The note begged him to forgive her for hiding the truth and then dropped the bomb. She was a witch from Rufaro. She reveals the wardrobe opens into Ruvaro, a wild realm pulsing with uncanny abilities and raw magic, teeming with deadly creatures and monstrous beings that eclipse human limits. The old witch pressed a ring into his hand that magically ripped open this world's language for him and ordered Shura to read the 2 books hidden behind the altar. He digs through the books and uncovers a mention of the ring, but at first the script holds tight and he can't decipher a single word. His grandmother's voice snaps into his mind, urging him to slip the ring onto his finger, and pure joy surges through him. Understanding snaps into place, letters bloom into meaning, and as he keeps reading, a voice thunders in his head. You've acquired the skill equivalent exchange. Shira sprang up, eyes cutting the space for any sign of someone nearby, then cold dread hit him. The place was empty, he was alone. Like a video game, a new ability ignited in him, and another item materialized in his inventory as he plotted his next move. He hovered on the threshold, heart hammering, until his grandmother's old saying punched through the doubt. Everything will become clear when you get to the place. He straps on his pack, whispers a prayer for his grandmother, and vows to set off at first light the next day. The next morning, Shur sets off on his journey, excitement crackling through his veins after a long trip. He bursts into a city teeming with warriors, captains, and mages at every turn. Transfixed by the sight, he kept walking until mid-stride, a sudden, ravenous hunger slammed into him. He fixates on the kebab stall, curiosity clawing at him as Shurko leans in and asks, "What kind of meat do you use here?" The seller proclaims it's a horned rabbit, and he wants only 3 bronze coins. The young man blurted an apology and confessed he had no money, making the seller bristle with irritation. The second shashlik crosses his mind, his mouth floods, and every fiber of him screams for that juicy, smoky, irresistible bite. Boom, realization slams into him. He has 4,200 yen left from the store change. A raw longing rips through him. He aches to buy those kebabs with his yen. In that instant, a blazing circle ignited in his palm, and Quander shoved the yen he clutched into its center. A young man bolts to the counter, heart pounding, begging to know if the new coin is truly bronze. The seller nods and confirms it. Surprise flashed in the seller's eyes. He shrugged and guessed Seer must be a traveler from distant lands. Riding the high of his trading prowess, Shiro snatched up 3 skewers. He devours it with glee, then his grin collapses as the flavor reveals itself painfully plain. He plunges into experiments, forcing the coins back into yen, and discovering he can flip their form at any instant with his ability. Convinced he could make a killing, he doubled down on experiments, traded ever larger sums, and even struck a silver coin. He darts back to the counter and snaps, "Can I pay with this?" The seller snaps there's not enough change. Shur's mind races. Where did Telly's money go? Bursting with excitement, he bolts out to explore the area, spots a lively market, and plunges into cheerful banter with the locals. Shiro watches every pair of eyes snap to him, his modern clothes screaming for attention. She edges closer, hands trembling, and offers the flowers like a fragile confession. When he asks for the price, she falters, nerves spiking, and she hastily slashes her offer. He plucks a yellow flower, slips 3 bronze coins into her hand, and she reels back, stunned. He snarls that after shelling out that much he at least deserves her name, then demands, "What's your name?" Anna steps forward and tells her story, talking about herself with fierce, unflinching honesty. Shira spits her name like a challenge and vows she'll return. Anna Shuru snaps that he's in Menorca, a corner of the Hillam Kingdom. Bronze coins are worth 100 yen, silver 10,000, and gold a jaw dropping 1 million yen. Most people snag about 8 silver coins every month. Gold, though, is almost never seen. Even little Anna needs the state's green light before she can sell anything. He splurges on another bouquet and she freezes, eyes wide with stunned disbelief. She swears to him everything's fine. He realizes a lone decorative flower glares, screaming that it doesn't belong. Warmth wells up in him when he thinks of him. He's sure these gorgeous flowers will make his grandmother beam. She touches his arm, offers to take him to the government office, and shoots ahead, leading the way with beaming, breathless excitement. As they approach the towering building, she lights up and jabs a finger toward it, eyes sparkling. Shira's gut clenched at the thought that being a foreigner could spark trouble, but Anna flashed a warm smile and reassured him the locals here were good people. Sherry's a bundle of nerves, and when the stern old elf fires a question at him in the office, he practically jumps out of his skin. She slaps a form into his hands, orders him to fill it out, then rattles off the choices: hawk goods as a street vendor or haul loads for 10 bronze coins a day. The same feed mixture pitched at stall. The shop owner can slap a rent of 3 silver coins a day on you, and he won't accept anything shorter than 10 days. Shura locks onto the option showcasing the sales point and submits the form with a decisive click. The elf stares at his own strange name, blurts a shockingly low price, and regret crashes in. He has no idea what local prices are. Her stern mask cracks as she concedes it's fair. She thanks the mayor for setting the prices and wishes him success. Sherry fixates on herself first, then turns to Annie and admits she's stunned by how it all turned out. He shot her a grateful grin, thanked her too, then pivoted and dashed back toward the market. Anna's face crumpled. She forced out a trembling goodbye and tucked her chin, shyly lowering her head. If Shur starts from the wrong side, she snaps, barks a sharp correction, and points him straight to the right path. At the bustling market, she lanes in, eyes blazing, and fires, "What will you be selling?" He bursts in, brimming with confidence, then within seconds blurts that he has no clue what it's about. Spotting his indecision, Anna's grin blooms as she urges them to set off on adventures with brand new gear. Heeding her suggestion, Shura charges forward and locks eyes with a sorceress, a warrior, and a group of soldiers. Anya leans in, eyes blazing, describing the monsters that stalk the neighboring forest, draw them here. He pictures a tentacled beast lunging for him, then her voice slams into his head and snaps him back. Her voice broke as she confessed the monsters were tanking her flower sales. "Don't sulk," he's ecstatic he bought so many. Is that a grin tugging at his lips? Anna says she's glad to meet them. Heat flares across Shiro's face. She blurts, "I'll show you the local market." They burst into the flashlight store and freeze. The owner is a dead ringer. I burst into a shop piled with sleeping bags and froze. The seller had a cat's face and marched around on clacking hooves. A shop peddles knives and coils of rope, while a woman in a rabbit costume cinches a man into tight bindings. Different balls crowd every corner, and Hannah proclaims with fierce pride that this place is truly special. Anna promised a light tap, but she misjudged and struck her chest too hard. She coughed in shock, and the guy's worry flared instantly. She clasped Shuar's hand and led him to the nearby shops, and he looked at her with warm eyes, imagining the wonderful wife she could become. Mid-conversation, he unleashed a relentless torrent of words. Shirer's mind burst into daydreams of how soon he'd have a wonderful wife and a laughing little daughter. Anna yanked him out of his thoughts, curiosity burning in her eyes as she shot, "What are you planning to sell?" Shur slipped in close and breathed the answer into her ear. The next day, hearing his words again, Anna froze in bafflement. She still couldn't crack what he meant. Morning broke and Shura shot into a joyful stretch, laid out his goods, then sprang up to greet. When asked if she'd sell flowers again, she nodded and said she'd hauled herself out of bed at dawn to gather them. Shira gushed to her, calling the flowers breathtaking and guaranteeing she'd sell loads of them. Hearing this, Anna's smile burst wide as she revealed she was selling them to buy medicine for her mom. Anna, buzzing with energy, waved goodbye and called out that he'd catch up with her later. She bolted down the street with a basket, pressing flowers into the hands of passers-by, then slammed into someone and went sprawling. Tears stung his eyes, but he roared encouragement and vowed he'd give it everything he had. Just then the first customer barreled up and barked, "What are you selling?" The buyer blinked, stunned, as the box was handed over with brazen confidence. Could this really be a handmade piece? Shur slammed the matchbox into my hand, eyes blazing. This is a matchbox, a tiny stick inside that can ignite a fire. The client and the adventurer scoffed, incredulous that a tiny wooden stick could actually spark a blaze. Shira struck a match against the box. A tiny flame snapped to life, and the adventurer leaned in, eyes wide and confused at first. He blurted out as shock slammed into him, and pandemonium exploded around him. The adventurer slammed into the ground, shot upright, and gasped, "How did you even pull that off?" Holding a burning match, Shira brushed off the traveler's question with a cool shrug, completely unfazed and wondering if he really had never seen anything like it. He warned he'd reveal it all again, kicked off the countdown, and when it ended he struck another match, blowing everyone present away. A crowd surged around him, mouths agape at the traveler's shocking reaction. Some swore it was witchcraft, others shouted magic, and a few blamed a bizarre contraption. No one had ever seen anything like it. Shiro boomed that the product was foolproof. Customers leapt in, tried the matches themselves, and erupted with joy. Shiro twirled like a man possessed, a fierce grin spreading as his plan snapped into place. Cutting through the market with Anna, he realized no one here had ever seen matches, so he tore back to his world, grabbed a supply, and returned to sell them. The old elf from market gaped. He hadn't seen anything like this in 250 years, and the lizard bobbed its scaly head in joyous agreement. That earlier adventure blew our minds and left us breathless. Striking stones to spark a fire dragged on forever, and magical tools twisted into a maddening tangle. The traveler huffed that the tools were crushingly heavy and a nightmare to haul with them. Denied the witch's help, he fought for ages until a stubborn spark finally ignited the fire. Shura nodded with iron confidence and erupted into a bold pitch like a tech genius unveiling a miracle, declaring that people would no longer suffer those problems because he had delivered freedom. At the peak of the drama, he dressed in Steve Jobs' black turtleneck, hoisted a tiny box, and the crowd erupted into thunderous applause. He bellowed, "Who wants to buy?" A voice shot back instantly, but he was cut off mid-word. The adventurer's grin snapped shut. He leaned in, voice like steel, and demanded the price of that match. Whispers rippled through the crowd, everyone convinced it would cost a fortune. Sir had already seen it coming and asked the traveler outright what it would cost. The traveler hesitated, thought a beat, then guessed about 80 bronze coins. Shira smiled, mind racing between two ruthless plans: price them as luxury items to pocket massive profit per sale, or slash the tag to lure a flood of buyers and earn more through sheer volume. He grabbed a cut in cash from every sale at first. Only a handful could afford it, but as the market exploded and buyers flooded in, his take began to shrink. Beaming, he announces each box packs 40 matches, and to celebrate his new shop's grand opening, he's slashing the price to just 5 bronze coins a box. It stunned everyone, and orders flooded in like a tidal wave. Sure snaps keep the match bone dry, a single drop of moisture will wreck it. In the end, the boy sells his goods to over 100 buyers, leaving one old man empty-handed. He apologizes and swears he'll be first in line for him tomorrow. The grandfather snaps, offended, "I'm only 120 years old." Exhausted and stunned by the crushing crowd, Chiru crashes down to rest, dread already clawing at him for what tomorrow will bring. Storm clouds gather overhead as the young man doubts he has the strength to move on. Then a lone flower drifts down, and he knows he cannot give up. Spotlight snaps to Anna. True to form, she stoops and plucks the fallen flower from the ground, a smile brightening her face. She crackles with energy, hawking bouquets, and roaring to every passerby that the prices are a steal. A voice ripped her name from the air. She whipped around to see who'd called. Shura bursts out, "Your shop." He snaps back, "Sold every last thing, I'm closed for today." It greets him, but the instant Shura snaps, "How are your sales?" Heat floods her cheeks. She tucks the basket of flowers out of sight, and with a trembling whisper confesses she isn't sure. She stares at her flowers, baffled they won't move, as tears well up and sting her eyes. Worry claws at her as she checks if she's okay. Then she briskly wipes away her tears and forces out that everything's fine. She sprints forward, charging to sell even more. He lunges, snatches her hand, and yanks her back, stopping her dead in her tracks. Confusion flickered in her tear-filled eyes as he begged her to listen. She erupts, shouting, "What do you mean?" He pleads for her help tomorrow, and she leans in, voice sharp with concern, asking, "Is everything okay?" She fires her up, insisting he needs her, only she can handle it, and vows she'll pay. Anna shot a quick nod at the proposal, her grin exploding as she agreed to help. She couldn't wait to work with Shuru. He throws out a grateful "thank you," but she brushes it off, saying it's unnecessary. She hasn't sold a single flower. She grabs his hand and declares she's the one who should be thanking him. Warmth filled his gaze as her sincere gratitude convinced him he had to push himself harder. Shur asks, "Can we meet tomorrow?" and she, fingers still threaded through his, beams and says yes. They scatter and he whips his head around, hunting for any prying eyes. Seeing no one around, he pries open a portal to his world and cloaks it instantly, heart hammering at the thought of being spotted. He insists the portal to the wardrobe can burst open anywhere. Fear of gossip claws at him, and the second he walks back through his door, he lunges to check exactly how much he earned. He feeds his coins into a special exchange and walks out clutching yen. He raked in 25,550 yen in a single day, elated as he stacked it up against his old salary. He's convinced that if this keeps up, he'll never have to work again. He pictures himself glued to video games and reading manga. But he snaps back to reality and steels himself, resolved to prepare for tomorrow. Shiro bursts through the supermarket doors, eyes slashing down the aisles as he hunts for matches. He finds them and locks onto the rare ones, the survivors that defy wind and water, and he can't believe he never even suspected they existed. He slips a few pieces into his pouch, planning to hawk them to adventurers later and cash in big. The cashier's brow knots at the odd sight and a cold doubt surges. What if something's wrong with him? Hoisting the boxes, Sure freezes. He never once thought about how brutal it would be to drag all this home. A lightning bolt idea strikes. He fixes on using his transformation power. In a world where he can use one more special skill, he ducks into a quiet nook, stashes his purchases, and rips open his pocket dimension storage. A jagged tear in reality ripped open before Shiro, and she reeled, eyes wide in stunned disbelief. He hurls package after package into it. When the last one lands, he erupts in triumphant laughter. He's just claimed his very own pocket dimension. He remembers cramming every bit of his life into a backpack, and years on that brutal job wrecked his back. He can tell shoving all these purchases into bags would leave him unable to lug them. Shiro's jaw drops when he realizes he can peer into a huge magical circle and read every tiny detail of the object stored inside. Curiosity scorches him. Are there limits to this power, and what is his grandmother planning? He stares at his hands and a cold, brutal truth slams into him. They'll never hold anything again. He steels himself to hawk matchboxes for 4 more days, then scouts his next big seller. He thrust his hand into the air with cocky certainty and vowed that, thanks to these abilities, he'd become rich without fail. At that moment, a little girl jabs a finger at him and blurts to her mother that the strange man is mumbling to himself again. The mother snaps at her for pointing at strangers. Shyness coils in her chest. She ducks her head and hurries home. Day breaks and Anna snaps awake inside a humble, unadorned brick house. Little Anna blurts that we bought her mom. A vase of flowers gleams on the windowsill as her mom lies in bed. A woman beams, asking, "Anna, are you taking the flowers?" Anna shakes her head. "No, I'm off to help at Shira's store now." At his grandmother's, Shira knelt at the home altar and sought her blessing, then stepped through the portal with his heart pounding, elation flooding him as he finally launched into a brand new day. Anna strides through the city, a smile blazing on her face, then closes the gap and catches up with the others. He bursts in, blurting a rushed greeting and apologizing for running late. She replies that she just arrived. He goads her into admitting she paused for a heartbeat. She grins, admitting customers are already lining up. Only then does he spot a handful of people gathered outside the store. Anna bursts back, beaming and ready to begin. He says he's still got a few things to prepare. He watches a massive queue of buyers swell, so tight it clogs the entrances to every neighboring shop. A warning bell screams in his chest. He knows this is bad. He'd already fought something like this at his previous job. A worried shopkeeper yells about the swelling crowd, and Shura's eyes flash as he swears he'll tame the chaos. He leans in, jaw-dropping. It's the kebab seller from the stall. The seller barrels up to Shura and spits that he'd heard about the matches, but never believed they'd actually be about him. He spots a line snaking out the door with no one being served and calls out, "Is everything all right?" Shura tears into the other store's flaws, lays out the problem in plain terms, and the seller's expression snaps into understanding. Her friends press Shira to take an unpaid shift at their place today because it's farther away. Shura leans in and asks if everything's all right. The woman relaxes and says it's fine, they're on a break now. Shura thanks her, and Anna's eyes instantly light up. He snaps, "Is she the merchant's wife?" The man blurts out she's his sister. She shoots Shira a sly wink and his jaw drops. They don't look a thing alike. She's a breathtaking girl. Shiro and Anna cut a shortcut to the store with roasted meat, and the moment they reach it, they leap into action, scrambling to unpack the goods. Shira rips into the lineup, calling out which sizes and products sell best. She plastered a smile and swore everything was fine, but her hands betrayed her with a faint tremor. He asks again when he notices. They fling the doors wide and open the store anyway. A massive line snakes outside as people apologize for the delay and shout they'll start serving any second. The quick one shouts, "Priority ticket holders, come forward." He coaches Anna on taking orders. Her hands tremble, but she swallows her nerves and follows his instructions to the letter. Boxes vanish in a blink and the queue still stretches like a living wall. Anna calls the next customer, heart racing and eyes blazing with excitement. Disbelief ignites into a thrill as he thinks, is this real sales magic? Closing time's almost here, and Shiro faces the visitors with an apologetic smile. Every last item's already been snapped up. Anna's jaw dropped, sure boomed that none of this would exist without her and the kebab kiosk owners. He slams the coins they earned onto the table and counts each one to confirm his share. He counted on just 200,000 yen from yesterday's sales. 3 hours later, they'd raked in 1 million yen. A young man crunches the numbers and realizes the 5 million yen in his pocket amounts to about 490,000 yen an hour. He stares, asking himself if that's already millionaire-level income. He bolts to dodge trouble, slings his backpack onto his shoulders, and the weight nearly sends him sprawling. His fingers itch to shove it into his pocket dimension, but he freezes, afraid someone will notice. He pressed a pouch of coins into Anna's palm as a token of his gratitude for her help, and she lit up, thanking him with bright, joyful laughter. He cups her head and urges, "Buy your mom a gift, she helped you so much." Anna insists, voice sharp, that she's grateful for the work in his workshop. Shira cuts her off. He brushes off her thanks, insisting she earned it through relentless hard work, then winks teasingly. She stuck out a tiny, stubborn pout, desperate to heap on more thanks, and Shira burst into laughter. Her stomach roared, and she erupted into a painfully awkward, betrayed blush. She snaps her bag open, sees they've missed the break, and grins as she holds up a snack. "Come on, let's eat together." Shura snatches a sandwich from Anna's bag. Anna's mouth waters instantly as she blurts, "Is that bread?" After tasting the dish, joy explodes through her. Her eyes sparkle as she savors every bite, shouting it's delicious, and Shira beams, thrilled that she liked it. Mid-bite, a statuesque, impeccably dressed young woman with long hair cascading down her back strides up to their table. She asks for a moment, breathless, saying she's heard whispers about the matches and is itching to know if Shura was the one selling them. He admits he was there, but says everything had already been snapped up. She clutched a hand to her heart and declared, "I didn't come to buy." She strode up to him and declared, "I'm Shankara, the city's mayor." She blindsided Shura. He'd never pictured someone this young and stunning holding that post. Instead, I conjured a hulking, muscle-bound man. He stammers out, "What do you want to talk about?" As Sankara and Anna watch, eyes locked on every word. "Sure, you burst into Bayaz with electrifying trading skills and showed us the ropes, thank you." Shari snaps, "You're the one who should be thanking me for letting you sell here." She calls him modest, snarls that most local merchants are a nightmare to deal with. Shiro freezes, stunned. She suddenly declares he could help her, he's blindsided, and they explode into a tense, rapid-fire exchange. Anna Dosoff dozes, mouth twitching at imagined feasts, while Sankara snaps that the city's cut-off isolation makes merchants swagger in like nobles, as if their mere arrival is charity. They slap sky-high price tags on their goods, while local products are dumped for pennies, ripping the city's economic balance apart. Shura's eyes go wide, and she hangs on every word as the woman explodes with excitement, outlining her dream to solve the problem by creating a market. The last words left her lips, and his stunned gaze nailed her in place as awkwardness prickled through her. Then he thrusts the key into his palm, and his mind races as he feverishly guesses what it's meant to unlock. Shock slammed into Shara, her breath hitched as realization crashed over her. Was this the key to the house of Saint Kara? The thought refuses to die. Could it be hinting at some kind of relationship? Sankara winks and says, "This is the key to her house," and he freezes, stunned. When she asks what happened, he waves her off and forces out a brittle, "Everything's fine." Anna bursts in and drops the bomb. The mayor actually wants to live with Shiro. He reels in confusion when Anna insists Sinkar wants to marry him, and Sinkar's jaw snaps shut, teeth grinding in an awkward, embarrassed clench. She snaps back with a confident denial, insists she's neither lonely nor desperate, and pulls herself together in a heartbeat. She snaps back to the heart of the matter and throws out one urgent plea, a favor. Suddenly a voice cuts her off. "Are you married?" Heat scorches her cheeks and she squeaks, "No." She jabbed at the empty house and declared that, starting tomorrow, this key would let him unlock and enter it. She wants him to sell his goods on the first floor. Shrew blurted, "Why?" And just as he'd feared, St. Kara snapped that the other merchants were complaining they couldn't. Endless queues at his store steamrolled him. He couldn't compete. He nods, empathy flaring as he feels how brutal it is for them. Sankara flashes a grin, sweeps an arm wide to show everything. and reassures you there's no need to decide right away. They weave through the city and stop in front of the house she suggested, silence slamming into them as the full weight of the moment sinks in. Anna dashes around the store, whooping with opening day joy, while a woman watches openly, brow creased as she asks if everything's really okay, and nervously says she hopes everyone will like it. He interjects, "I've got one more question." Anna slid in close and whispered in his ear, hinting the mayor wants to know if he knows someone with a red face. Sure thunders that he understands everything and blurts he doesn't have a girlfriend, leaving the mayor utterly baffled as she splutters that she meant something else entirely. He roared with laughter and waved it off as a joke. Mirka Sankara's cheeks flamed, then she snapped herself back into composure. And he has the nerve to ask why he chose to peddle his wares in this city. She points out this tiny town squeezes just 500 people into its streets. A knife of sorrow twists in him the moment he realizes he could be earning more elsewhere. He beams and concedes she's right, he's already fallen for this place, even though he only arrived 3 days ago. He pours out thanks for how hard Anna worked helping him with the store and lauds the mayor's kindness despite being new to the city. His genuine words strike the mayor, who returns a warm, approving gaze as the young man confesses how much he loves this place. Memories of the kind people he met in Menorah blaze through him, igniting a fierce, grateful ache. You're from another world, clueless about every other city, and you feel in your bones that nowhere else will embrace you this warmly. Sankara presses his hands to his chest, gratitude surging as he offers Shira heartfelt thanks for her warm words. Anna froze, stunned, and when he saw he'd upset her, he scrambled into a desperate apology, pleading, "I didn't mean to." The man thrusts his hand toward him. She smiles and says he can call her Sankara. He clasps her hand and says he can just be called Shuru. Anna steps forward and introduces herself. A chorus of handshakes ripples through the room as everyone greets each other, and the mayor beams, declaring she's deeply pleased to meet them. A graph slams onto the screen, tracing how Shuru morphed from a cool accelerator into a store owner in just 3 days. He pictures his grandmother in heaven, beaming and flashing a peace sign. The next day he slams his pen down and signs a 1-month lease agreement for the store. 5 days later, Shiro drops the bomb. The products sold out, leaving customers reeling in shock. Clad in a suit and tie, he flips through the records and his jaw drops. He'd been sure he'd sold enough to supply an entire city, but the numbers betray him. Mom bursts in, triumphant, declaring she's already cleaned up the store. She urges them to rest upstairs again, volunteers to take on something else, and he cuts her off, insisting she's already done more than enough. Her stomach dropped as he sank into the chair and methodically laid the treats out on the tray. He spins to hand them to Anna, only to find her already sunk into sleep. Half asleep, the little girl murmurs, calling Shira her dad. He scrambles to fix it, Anna pleads for a hug, and he scoops her into his arms. Joy bursts through her as Dad finally scoops her into his arms, the same warm embrace Mom often wraps her in. Bam, he conks out again, can you believe it? Cheru feels sudden, fierce protectiveness. Has he become her father? He tucks a blanket around her and tells her she can turn to him with any request. Anna drifts into sleep, a smile blooming in her dreams, while Shura swears she'll move heaven and earth for her. On the 6th day of the sale, Shiro finally cuts Anna some slack and lets her catch her breath. He's utterly spent, every breath heavy, painfully aware how brutal it is to shoulder the work alone. At that moment the mayor steps in. He drops the bomb that the goods are out of stock again. She scoffs that it's predictable from a seller like that, and he rips the curtain back to reveal the real reason. He flooded the market, selling more than the entire city could possibly need. Mirka says she caught wind of some people reselling his goods in other cities. Shiro's weighing a bold move, slapping a hard cap on how many purchases any single customer can make. Sankara's face hardens into a serious mask as she announces she's come to ask a favor. A jolt told him this mattered. He beckoned her upstairs and snapped, "What exactly did you want to ask?" She clenches the renewal parchment, wrestling with whether to renew her membership in the City Guild of Adventurers. He drops the name Silver Moon, and the mayor freezes, stunned that this man already knows so much. The earthworm says he caught wind of it all. He stalks the city's every rumor. Most of his clients are adventurers, and the guild runs like a company that outsources every job. They snatch client orders, funnel them to freelancers to execute the tasks, and the organization pays only after the work is finished. You slay ravenous monsters, scour the wild for healing herbs and mushrooms, and blitz through a barrage of other tasks. Sankara snarled that Sanshru already knew, so he boiled it down. The Silver Moon is the city's only guild. She brings up the guild master, and the air between her and the lion curdles instantly. The guild leader stands at the helm, wielding colossal authority over the entire organization. She rockets to her feet and demands, did something happen to the head of the guild? The mayor paused for a heartbeat, then announced the flood had left everyone reeling. Sankara snaps that the guild's coffers are empty right now. There's no money to pay the adventurers. Dread grips her at the thought they'll abandon the city. Shur nods, terror washing over him as he realizes how catastrophic that would be. Mer's grin slices through the chaos. I've got a plan, she declares, the same cool steel she always brings when trouble hits. The mayor announced the capital's Adventurers Guild wants to plant a branch right here in our city. She'd always turned her back on defending the Silver Moon. Now Shira says that, given how things stand, accepting the capital's proposal might be worth it. Sankara beams a grateful thank you for his help. Shuri's gaze snags on her figure. He flushes, looks away awkwardly, and blurts that it's nothing. The mayor says if she accepts the proposal, representatives from the Capital Guild will sweep in and decide whether to open their brand here. She leaned in, voice low, and pressed Shrew to show them the matchboxes. He brushes it off, declares everything's fine, and snaps, what's the problem really? The sinker cried out, I've never seen anything like this, not even in the capital. And his mind claws for an answer. Where did he even pull something like that from? Shur chokes on his words and stammers out a shaky, hesitant reply. She shoots a sharp apology for meddling in someone else's affairs, then snaps that if Shira seizes a monopoly on the product, the guild will swarm it with ravenous interest. Shir knows the only way to rise is to bait the Capital Guild into turning its gaze on him. The mayor's stomach clenches with unease, but a determined woman soothes her with a bold vow she'll bring back something that will even leave her stunned. Kind and shy, Senkrakalsum swears he'll repay anyone who helped him. The next day Anna bursts back into work, spots Shira shadowed by worry, and rushes over to ask if he's okay. He scrambles, hunting for anything that will snag the guild inspector's attention. He locked eyes with Anna and declared he had to visit St. Car's home. Sanka stumbles in, stunned by Shuru's request, and she leans in, challenging him again. Are you really serious about this? Shira steels herself, proclaims she'll become an adventurer, and boldly asks to join them. Demand to know, does he really want to go hiking with the adventurers? He agrees, declaring with iron conviction that this is the only way to find out what they truly need. The mayor's voice boomed as he demanded, do you truly understand every risk? Since every adventurer here rushes into the forest, we catch sight of the eastern woods, and there prowls a massive, shadowy beast, wolf-like in form. Shur admits the danger, flashes a grin, and says he could become a trophy-collecting traveler. Shankara's voice cut in, he agreed. It was the safer choice. She's itching to introduce him to a handful of adventurers. Those notes torpedo the relationship with the Silver Moon Guild. St. Cara recounted how, last night, the temporary head of the guild slipped into her home like a shadow. He pleaded for money, burst into desperate sobs, then collapsed to the floor. Shur reels, stunned by the audacity, and snaps how many guilds are needed, as Sankar lifts 10 fingers. Shira throws out 10 copper coins, instantly shakes her head, and he fires back 10 silver coins. She denies it again. Shura's scream rips the air when he realizes his 10 gold coins are actually 10 million yen. Sankara snaps at him, scolding him for causing the commotion. She bows her head and snaps, money like that doesn't exist in their town. Even a tenth of this, we'd handle it without breaking a sweat. We refused them outright. Now getting the guild to lift a finger for us will be nearly impossible. Worry knots the mayor's brow. She stares at the inkwell, dips her pen, scribbles a letter, presses it into Shira's hand, and warns her not to cling to hope. Shurd's heart thundered as he reached the Silver Moon Guild for the first time. He'd never been inside, and nerves coiled in his stomach. He storms inside and instantly spots the wreckage. An adventurer barrels into him and sends him crashing to the floor. The warrior thundered that Shira is new here and must respect her elders. Shiro claws himself upright, gasping, and snaps that he's a merchant, not an adventurer. The traveler leaned in, hissed a threat, and spat, You're a wealthy merchant, Krot, so you'd better value the blow I'm offering. Shiro slips out on silent feet, his guts screaming that this shouldn't be happening, and he edges toward the door. He steps over the threshold and asks to be let in, then scans the room and finds no one. A sudden presence knocks at his senses. Someone's right beside him. He snaps, Who's there? A soft cry answers. He steps closer and says, I have a letter from the mayor, and the stranger responds. Shura's hand ghosted to her shoulder. He whispered, May I need to talk, and the rabbit-eared girl with the long tail snapped around to face him. She blanches. She knows neither Shura nor Yelves, and she snaps, Who is he, and how long has he been standing here? Doubt clawed at Shura. Was she really part of the guild? She shrieks, voice raw and relentless, hurling the demand like a dagger. Why did you touch me? Screaming non-stop, she blurts, Shira, have you fallen in love with me? She snaps, warning him, one command and she'll summon 1,000 battle-hardened warriors. She's a girl from Silvermoon. She imagines herself at the head of a revolutionary army, barking orders as banners snap in the wind. Shiro rips her back to reality and snaps, is anyone else here? She admits others slip in sometimes, but she insists, fierce and unyielding, that only she can take him down. She whips her arms through the air, roaring that a single strike will shatter stone. Disappointment snapped across Shira's face. She could already tell dealing with her would be a nightmare. He cuts her off again, snapping, "Where's the master's deputy now? Call him," and she swallows, admitting she can do it. Plot twist, she's secretly been holding the guild's reins as its interim head. Stunned, rabbit-eared Amal's mind exploded with flashes of the wild chain of events that landed her as the guild's new head. Everyone else was gone, it all fell to her, she was the last one standing. There was another girl, the instant the old master bolted, she vanished too. Reeling drunk, Amel slams the bottle onto the table and confesses to Shur that they'd been meeting in secret. Indignant, she snarls they never even suspected she understood everything. Everything ignited when they stole quiet kisses in hidden corners. They tore down the last of their secrecy and laid their feelings bare in the host's room, and she exploded, spitting curses. Hoping for their utter ruin, they'll be ambushed and dragged into slavery. Amel spits that the former owner reeked like a dog, and Shira rushes to calm her, insisting she did everything she could. He asks if she's finally drained all her anger, and she thanks him for listening to her rant for a full 5 hours. Cheeks blazing, she begins unbuttoning her shirt to repay his kindness, and he gasps in surprise, asking what she's doing. Emil snaps his shirt shut and fires off, "Any tasks for me?" Shur slams a letter from the mayor into her hands. The instant Emo discovers who sent it, she detonates, unleashing a blistering tirade that rips into them. Dread slammed into Shari, he couldn't fulfill Grandma's request, and now her ring might be shattered. He scoffs, convinced she's concocted the whole thing, and deciphers the letters from Miss Sankara, the mayor of the town of Minor. Amel keeps hurling insults at the mermaid, sneering that she's a foolish, soulless woman. She yanks the letter from Shira's hands, hissing that if it's from Sankara it must be destroyed, then rips it to shreds. Emil condemns betrayal and deceit as unforgivable, and the room erupts in shocked cries. She whirls to him, eyes blazing, and snaps, "What's your connection to Sankara?" Rage ignited in her when the mayor coldly rejected the Silver Moon and picked another guild. She turned the mayor into her puppet, yanking every string with brutal, shameless precision. Right now, Sankara explodes into a thunderous sneeze, shaking his office. Amel sees that even when she begged the mayor, Sankara refused to give her 10 gold coins, and panic surges through Sankara as he scrambles to call Shurumine. Shiro lunges forward, arms out, racing to calm the chaos and insisting it was a staggering amount of money. In Sankari, an entirely different storm of worries was probably raging. She whirls to Shura and snaps, "Why are you defending the mayor so fiercely? Are you in love with Sankara?" Tears streaming, she choked out that she still loved the mayor and called her best friend. Shira swears that hurling insults at someone, especially a close friend, is unforgivable. Emma swipes at her tears and chokes out that the oldest was crushed without money, and now she doesn't know what to do next. The boy tells her that since she confessed her feelings for the mayor, he pardons her for ripping up the letter. Shur thrusts a handkerchief into Emo's palm and declares he wants to ask the guild for a favor. She springs to her feet, flips her hat into place, and snaps, "What do you need?" He's itching to leap into an adventure or throw himself headfirst into a daring mission. Emel steels himself and vows to submit the request, even though they've never done it before. He asks if organizing will be difficult. She grins and vows she'll handle every last detail. She warns only a lone squad of 4 veteran specialists can pull this off, so brace yourself, the price will skyrocket. She leans in, eyes blazing, and declares, "We're called Asia Flash." Picture this: around a crackling fire in the forest, a long-haired sorceress and a tall, middle-aged priest sat. A young warrior shackled as a captive, fire of defiance blazing in his eyes. Shira replays every moment since he stepped into this world. His mind snaps to the instant he pried open the wardrobe and uncovered the hidden portal. The day he met Anna and the avalanche of chaos that exploded afterward. Everything had raced by until he was shoved behind the counter of the shop the mayor had assigned him. Memories of the mysterious Silver Moon Guild lash at his mind again. Shur recalls, curiosity prickling and embarrassment burning his cheeks, that unexpected meeting with the substitute teacher in Nili. Anna snaps him out of his trance, worry carved across her face as she asks, "Are you really going to close the shop for a while?" Shura nodded, eyes blazing. 3 days, I'm going to live like a true adventurer. Anna leaned in at Grincy, listened intently, nodded to show she understood, then grinned and declared she was glad. She's got her own personal problems to settle. She turns to walk away when a tiny backpack suddenly snaps onto her shoulders. Worry flashes across Shryu's face as he asks if she's all right. Anna smiles serenely, says she's fine, then pauses at the doorway to tell him to take care of himself before slipping away. After they part ways, Shur darts to the guild and skids to a halt before the towering wooden doors. Right as his hand reaches for the door, a familiar figure cuts in. Emil appears out of nowhere, grinning. "I've been waiting for you," she says, then whisks him inside. Shiro freezes, memories of last night crashing back, his face blazing red as he snaps his gaze away. Seeing it, Emil blinks and demands why he looks terrified. Before he can get a word out, she jumps in and vows she won't tease him. She pivots the conversation, sweeping a hand to beckon the silver adventurers, the guild's pride, into the circle, and as Shire studies them, he spots a young adventurer on a nearby bench, eyes glued to the unfolding scene. Himalgo bellows that this team will join Shiri on his quest to gather the special herbs. Two girls from the group fix their gaze on Shura, and in an instant, before Emo can even name the young man who'd just been sitting, rockets to his feet with a broad grin and calls to Shura, "We haven't seen each other in ages." Shur blinked a few times, his mind scrambling to place the guy, then recognition slammed into him. On this adventure, he snapped up his very first box of matches. The boy inclined his head politely and proclaimed, "I am Lyre, the leader of this group." He jabbed a finger at the elderly man garbed in priestly robes, Rawl. Roll strode up, a warm smile lighting his face, greeted Shiro, and said he hoped they'd become good friends. Lur drops a crucial detail. Though Roll is a cleric, he fights like a juggernaut with a massive staff, gentle at heart, but don't rile him, Lur warns. Then he introduces everyone to the girl, long hair spilling from beneath a massive witch's hat, a cloak around her shoulders and a staff clenched in her hand, Neska, the team's sorceress. Lur prods her to speak, and Neska, indifferent, murmurs a soft greeting to Shuru. Lyre grins sheepishly and admits she's a touch shy, but her magic is fierce. She just needs a few extra heartbeats to weave each spell. Neska snaps her stick up and flicks the Lyre with a feather-light tap on the head, mumbling for him to stay out of her affairs. Lyre growled, refusing to help until she sped up the magic, and Neska rolled her eyes and shot back, "I'll think about it." Before Lyre can push the introductions any further, a sudden, shocking interruption rips the moment apart. From the back of the room, someone rockets through the air, lands like a feather between the Lyre and the confident one, strikes a quick pose and declares, "I am Keela." His stare pins her cat ears suddenly twitch, and he blurts, "Are you of the cat race?" His grin vanishes and his face hardens as he admits that many people, even some of the guild's clients, flat out dislike this race. Keela shoots a glance at Lyra and snaps that it's strange. Shura bristles, wounded that anyone could not like such a lovely race. Keela hears it, beams, preens, and teases that those words made her blush. Lyra roars with pride that Keela is the scout of their group. He spearheads their advance, sniffs out traps, and runs reconnaissance. Trapped, Keela snaps that she fights with a bow and dagger. Shiro grins, "That's cool," and the girl swells with pride, boldly declaring this is far from all she's capable of. He pins her with a stern glare and snaps that she too bolts the fastest. The cat cradled in her arms huffs, there was no need to say it. The guild leader clapped like thunder, bellowed, everyone ready to set off, and snapped at Shiro, "Have you prepared everything?" Shiro bellows he's ready, excitement crackling off him, and Lara grins at his spark, declaring they're heading into the eastern forest. He strides up to the bar, freezes for a heartbeat, then swings the door wide open. The drunken man staggers to his feet, swaying as recognition flares. He lurches toward her, reaches for her face and rasps, "I promised I'd do this." The door slams shut and Shur locks eyes with four confident figures, Rolf the warrior monk, Nesku the sorceress, Keela the scout, and Liara the brave leader. Lyre stares at the horizon, pulse thrumming with the coming adventure, silently begging the road ahead to stay smooth. They snap into single file along the tight forest trail, Keela at the head, everyone edging forward with senses razor sharp, scanning every shadow and sound. Young Shiru jitters, but Liara catches the fear and soothes him, vowing they'll dodge monsters whenever they can. Shiru exhales in relief and thanks her. While they walk, Lyra scoffs that herb foraging is boring, and Keela snaps back, triumphant, that she's already gathered some. The Efkasians cry that the herbs they need are vanishing like ghosts and impossible to track down, and the monk declares that once they secure those plants, their work will be finished. Dusk tightened its grip on Lyra, anxiety flaring as Neska Warren flashed through her mind, so she decided to stop here for the night. Surprise snaps across Shura's face as he blurts, "Is it really this early to stop?" The warrior grins knowingly, travelers seize rest the moment a chance shows itself. Those wise words slammed into Shura. His throat clenched and tears edged his eyes as he remembered his former boss had never once said anything like that. Lyre barks for everyone to prepare camp. Sheru and Keela dash into the brush, hauling armfuls of firewood back. Rolf cleaves saplings with his axe as Lair strikes a match, and tells Shura that such things are incredibly convenient. The priest clasps the sponsor's hands, voice trembling with sincere gratitude as he thanks them for the supplies they provided. Lyre cracks a grin and boasts he could strike it rich peddling matches in the capital. Rolf nods, voice low and dangerous. If the trade association finds out, serious trouble will follow. Lyre laughs, declaring the priest's prophecies almost always hit their mark. That ruthless accuracy was what stunned Shura. Nesca bursts forward, grumbling about hunger and those pesky gray larks, and hollers for everyone to eat after the walk through the glade. Shiri watches, breath held, as Nesca bites into the stale bread and dried meat, his eyes locked on that simple meal like it's the only thing that matters. It blows my mind that even seasoned travelers, hardened by the road, chow down on such humble grub. Keela fixes him with a look, asks if he's eaten, sinks her teeth into a slab of meat, then holds it out to him. Shur tilts his head in a polite shake, thanks her with a swift smile, says he's already taken everything he needs, and snaps his bag shut. Lyre leans in, curiosity burning in her eyes, as Ralph's jaw drops in stunned surprise when she reveals what's inside, and the leader gapes, unable to believe it's real food. Everyone's jaws drop at the sight of the supplies as Shiro yanks out canned goods, instant noodles, and a mountain of cookies. Nesca swallowed hard, nerves knotting her throat, and Lur leans in, sharp. You gonna eat all of this by yourself? The guy grins and explains, I brought treats for everyone. The team gaped as Shur grinned and revealed he's trialing new products for his shop and wants their honest opinion. They freeze for a heartbeat, then Lair grins and declares them free samples. Everyone explodes into joyful cheers and surges forward to snatch a taste. Lyra yanks ramen into a tight grip as Hyla snatches a rice cake. Rolf thrusts a warm bun forward and Nesca lunges for the cookie. Everyone's faces light up with delight at the first bite. Shur beams, watching them devour the treats and soaking in how much they love them. They collapse to the floor, stomachs full, and Nesca clutched a candy to her chest, swearing she'd carry the chocolate's taste in her memory forever. Ralph clamped the cross to his chest, tears stinging his eyes, and proclaims, Holy Grace. They sink into a peaceful slumber, and Nesca, half lost in her dreams, mumbles about chocolate. Lyre strides up to Shura and urges him to rest too. Shur confesses he's not cut out for early nights. The deceiver leans in and offers to talk. He fixes him with a sharp gaze and offers a treat. Catching his reflection in the cup of tea, Shiro notices the travelers carry no sleeping bags. One of them explains they travel light so they can spring into action the instant danger appears. The Lyre draped a blanket over the sorceress and felt the chill. One blanket couldn't fend off winter, yet piling more would bury her under their weight. He sighs, aching for the preservation skill, and the moment he hears it, he slaps a chunk of butter into his tea. Curiosity blazing, he leans in and asks how the spatial storage works. The knack for lying is a rare weapon. Only one person in 100,000 can wield it. Lyre drops the bomb that the old dungeon hides a book with that skill, and Shira clamps down his surprise. He already owns that exact book. He tosses the question out like it's nothing. How much would a find like that run? And the warrior blanches, blurting, what's it about? It could be used if it could bear the weight of an entire crew. It sits at the edge of a sprawling estate, and Shiro pales, nodded in agreement. Laird Mitz's fee demanded a fortune far beyond anything he could ever earn on his own. Victory buzzes behind the merchant's calm smile as he swallows a laugh and plots to test his luck again later. When Shiro said he was going to sleep, he froze as Lur's senses snapped awake and he drew his sword. Shiro, confused, asked what had happened, and Lur silently raised a finger to his lips. He rips Keela and Ralph from sleep, thrusts the job of raising the sorceress onto Shira, and snarls that he senses a menace barreling toward them. We're forging them into fighters to stand against the monster's onslaught. The lair freezes, eavesdropping as the sorceress mumbles about chocolate in her sleep. Shur yanks Nesca awake, shouting that she must forget her sweet dreams, it's urgent. Nesca blinks, jolts, and fixes him with her trademark emotionless stare. Killer inhales sharply, sent hunting. Lair spots the twitch and snaps. Do you feel anything? The scout's scowl sharpened as he hissed a warning. It's dangerous. The wind swallows the monster's sounds, so we can't hear it. Ralph's pulse spikes. Standing before them is a razor-sharp intellect. Lyre snarls a demand. Groggy Nesca fights heavy eyelids and weaves the spell. Before she can lift a finger, a savage rumble rips through the air and pins her to the spot. The warrior whirls around, surprise ripping through him, snaps into a fighting stance with eyes blown wide. Right in front of him looms a massive, snarling bear. Lyra sizes up the scene and snaps that their silver-ranked team won't be able to beat this opponent. Shira trembles, dwarfed by its titanic bulk. The leader urges them to flee. Ralph cuts in, snapping, "Escape won't work, only Killa can pull this off. Her feline agility lets her slip through where the rest of us can't." Their mission: hunt down and kill the Fulter who refused to leave her companions. The priest declares the fight impossible and the scout trembles with fear. Layar stands rock steady, calm cutting through the chaos. The bear bellows, muscles coiling to launch, while the heroes hesitate, minds racing for the next move. Ralph grayly proposes, "Someone has to be the bait." Lyra zeroes in on the tension knotted inside him, testing his reaction with eyes that snag every twitch and shallow breath. Two choices slam into you: the wide-eyed novice or the adventureverse homebody. Seining stands towering with ironclad confidence. He's dead sure they'll choose him. When Lear clamps a hand on his shoulder, he braces to hear an apology for being sacrificed. Lair screamed for Shoxam to sprint off with Nesca and Kilo as he and Rolf charged in to bait the monster. Lyra's apology tumbled out, but Rolf only smiled, waved it off and said, "Don't worry, not after a journey like that." She stares at their choice and in a heartbeat, everything snaps into place. She knows it all before he even starts to speak. Nesca storms forward, voice blazing that she'll fight too, so the warrior slams a hand up, cutting her off and snarling that her slowness will only drag everyone down. Then the liar teases he'll dazzle her before his final breath, flashes a sly grin at the sorceress, and beckons her to step back. She sneers, "Fool," eyes glued to the floor. He squares his shoulders and begs Ralph for a heal if he can survive the first blow. The cleric nods and tosses a tight-lipped "good luck." Lear flashes a confident grin and declares he'll set a trap. The instant it springs, he commands everyone to bolt. Killy's eyes snapped wide as she hissed a warning. Something's creeping up from behind. Lair falters, haunted by the question, can anyone really trust her? When he peered into the pitch-black forest, the truth hit him like a blow. She was right. Two ferocious bears closed in, their roars ripping through the air and slamming off the trees. Nesca jolted back as the leader barked at her and Killy to prepare to flee. Raoul backed him up, vowing to stay with the others and hold the enemies at bay. Anna trembles but refuses, her voice cold and razor-sharp as she declares there's no way out and they're doomed to die. A charging horde of monsters barrels in, boxing the group in and cutting off every escape. Shira's heart hammered, then his grandmother's voice cut through the panic. "Never lose hope, even in the darkest times." He ripped open his backpack and rifled through it, hands frantic. Lyra burst out, stunned. "What are you planning?" The warrior screams for him to flee, but Shur plants his feet and locks eyes with the killer bear. He hurls something and the beast freezes mid-step, its body hardening to stone as an unseen force halts it right before the explosion. The firework detonates in a blinding flash, slamming into the monster as the entire company freezes, mouths hanging open in stunned awe. Seizing the opening, Sherry rockets at the monster and roars that the bear will regret ever crossing her path. He rips out the spray can and blasts it into the beast's face. Number freezes for a heartbeat, then lunges forward again. Wide-eyed at the spray paint's raw power, the hypocrite inches forward and blurts, "Is this some kind of magic?" Shiro flashes a sly grin, calls it a special tool, hoists the jar, and warns that opening it will release a strong poison. The merchant roars for everyone to flee now, but the liar slices through his plea and cuts him off mid-cry. Did the poison find its mark in the monster's eyes and nose? That's a perfect opening, strike now. Clarity hit them like lightning, they surged into action, and after a savage, no-mercy clash. They crushed the monsters and exploded into wild cheers in the forest's shadowed heart. Lyre barked, "Separate the bear meat now, and wipe out every last danger fast." Shira pounces on Lair with a wicked grin and goads him, "Have you fallen for Nesk?" Embarrassment crashes over the warrior wizards. They flush scarlet, fumble for words, and blurt, "Shiro, what do you mean?" He snaps, reminding everyone the liars claimed he'd been trying to impress the frightened girl. The group leader brushes the remark aside and yanks the conversation onto a new topic. They slip like shadows, stripping meat and prized parts and stashing them to hawk at the market later. Ralph seizes command and, barking orders, drives the team to dismantle the monster, one to peel away the hide, another to strip the meat free, a third to gather the claws. Keela leans in, eyes alight, and bursts out, "What are you going to do with the bear's lower half?" The priest insists a medicine can be made from the testicles, then coldly asks her to sever them. Shira Gorify steals the spotlight as this site's main star. Lyre closes the gap to Shura, face grave, and asks, "Can we talk? It's important." Lyre roars, demanding Shira stop gathering herbs and return to the city with him. Jab your finger at the fallen bear and shout that the merchant is desperate to hawk these materials right now before they rot. They fetch fortunes worth more than the rarest herbs. Shiri's jaw dropped as Brickun slammed his claim on half the loot. They swear the Shuru thing is the only thing that kept them alive. Gripping the canister, he figured it must be worth a fortune. But Shiro Kanchim roared, relief burning in his chest. The only real treasure is that they're all still alive. Shiro's words ignite a fierce warmth in the liar's chest. He breaks into a grin and spills praise for Shiro's kindness. Meanwhile, Kella skids to a halt, then bolts at Shura, shouting, "You're incredible." As he lunges for hugs, Shura dodges them. Keela barrels head first into the bush as Nesca and the merchant gape. The witch snaps a grin, nods, and declares, "Shira's a good guy too." Ralph grins and declares, "The world could use more traitors like me." Praise lands, and the shy person bursts into a crimson blush. The cool guy spits out the translation, pins the liar with a hard stare, and announces he understands they need to return to the city. He grins and volunteers to strip trophies from the slain bear by your side. Liar's grin twists into a cruel sneer as he mocks Shira's strength, only to be cut off mid-taunt. Shira unleashes her spatial storage skill, tearing a shimmering portal straight into reality. The group went speechless, stunned. Shuru took in their faces and burst out an apology for not mentioning it sooner. The false witness snaps back to his senses and sneers, "It's fine, they already owe me their lives." Just as he's about to leave, the deceiver stops him cold. He insisted that his ability to hold on to things meant they should press on with the mission. Shira can't afford to argue. They're yanking her into 2 more relentless days of adventure before they finally make it back to the city. He explodes into agreement, joy roaring through him at the sight of Shira again. Liar Curios leans in and asks if that girl is Shura's daughter. Shura snaps back that she's just his assistant in the store. The warrior dropped into a respectful bow and offered his name with calm, steady courtesy. Shira thrusts the store key into Anna's hand and orders her to stay put. The group races to the Silver Moon Guild, hell-bent on completing their mission. They burst inside and found Emo huddled on the floor, sobbing and pleading with her husband for more time to come up with the money. We usually think this will be a breeze, but in a heartbeat, events ripped us into a maelstrom of complications. He roars at Amal, "I've heard the same promises for months. I'm not letting you off easy this time. I've waited too long." She whirls to Liar and demands, "Who is that man?" Liar spits back, "Gerald, a materials trader who was tied to the guild's former head." A young man strides up to Gerald and declares his name. They step forward and demand to talk, desperate to uncover what's really happening. Gerald whipped off his hat, tossed a curt greeting their way, declared he'd lent the guild 10 gold coins, and since they hadn't repaid him, commandeered the building as collateral. He slams the Silver Moon Guild contract into view. Emo's gaze drops. Gerald snarls, demanding the money. If it doesn't arrive, he'll seize this property and every inch of land around it. Gerald snaps that selling the building and the land together could claw back his losses. He barks at Emo to bring the property's documents here right now. She plants her feet and refuses, voice iron. She won't do it for anything. He snaps, baffled, "Why cling to your role when the guild already rejected you? It screams for you to rip your hands free and walk away. There's nothing left to hope for." Emma snaps her head up, a hard set to her face, ready to lay everything bare as she declares this isn't just about duty. Shura and Lyra lean in, eyes blazing, devouring every second with electric excitement. Amal recounts how, half-freed and shunned by most, the Guild of Silver Huns swept him up and made him one of their own. For the first time in her life, she felt herself become part of something epic. She flashes back to those days, scarred by dark moments and lit by bright ones, and she's convinced the bright memories still outnumber the dark. Her eyes softened but steel-laced her words, "I won't let this go." Shuru locks onto her iron resolve as a buried memory claws its way back into his mind. She remembers it like yesterday. 5 years ago, his entire family descended on their grandmother's house. 2 years have burned away since she vanished without a trace, and his memories lie in shards. He can't remember everything. A memory slams into him. His mother warned she might sell this place because keeping it no longer made sense. The moment he heard that, he collapsed to his knees and begged her, desperate, not to do it. Every memory he had of his grandmother lived inside these walls. Shame slammed into him under everyone's gaze, and his relatives gaped, stunned by his sudden, explosive outburst of failing. Shur storms forward with unshakable confidence, and Lur blurts out in stunned surprise, "What are you going to do?" Gerald snaps at Emo, emotions change nothing, a contract must be fulfilled, and Emo, her face a blank mask, murmurs, "I understand," then slips right back into listening. The Major strides forward, ownership documents clenched in his fist, poised to pass them to their new owner. Shiro cuts her off mid-sentence and snaps, "Can I buy something from you right now?" Gerald's eyes snapped wide, shock burning through him as he gripped the killer bear's skin. Recognition hits him like lightning. That color screams this isn't just rare, it's from an even rarer species than he'd expected. The merchant practically lunged at Shy, voice urgent and wide-eyed as he begged him to sell it. He bows with a small, apologetic smile and refuses, voice calm as he explains, it's for the guild. Amal swallows hard and fesses up, she doesn't have the cash to buy it. Shiro grins, waves it off, and tells her she can pay later, whenever it's convenient, no rush. Lyra, heart cracked open by Shura's kindness, matches it and slams the very same deal onto the table. The warrior bellows that Amal can pay later. Her voice trips, joy flooding her, and she reaches out to take the generous gift with trembling, grateful hands. Gerald whips around to Emo, eyes blazing, and demands she sell him the skin for 32 gold coins. She snapped, refusing outright and insisting it cost 36 coins. The merchant falters, palms sweating as he crunches the numbers. Then after a fierce round of haggling, every last guild debt is wiped clean, and Emel pockets 26 gold coins. The bear's paw slammed 2 coins down, vaulting the Silver Moon Guild to 28 coins. Gerald bids farewell, satisfaction blazing in his chest as he watches everything fall into place. He smirks, declaring he's already hungry for their next deal, and coldly reminds her she has only one last chance left. She drops into a deep bow, gratitude blazing in her voice as she thanks him for his help. The team erupts, insisting Shiro deserves every ounce of their gratitude. They were out there simply living their duty as adventurers. Soon Lyra snaps, reminding them they're still waiting for the mission to finish. Emel Fries scanned the room, confusion crackling in their voice as they snapped. Shura, did you come for this task too? He shrugs and tosses out a casual, should I leave? And she snaps, your job's done, go. Lee barked, denying it, my duty is to protect him, I should stay at his side. Emil frantically waves his hands, insisting he's already safe and scrambling to yank the conversation onto another topic. The warrior presses, demanding to know if she'd already spent the mission money, and Emily's answers begin to fray as confusion floods her voice. Emil erupts with fierce certainty, swearing he never mishandled a single penny. The fraudster snarls for payment on the spot, pressing her to pay now, while the entire company digs in, insisting on 30 silver coins for their work. You're dying to know exactly how much that is. The liar from Listen snarled he couldn't accept a smaller sum for work this important. The young man snapped, it's not about the money at all. He slammed 100 silver coins onto the table, but a cold doubt raced through him. Were those extra 70 some kind of trick? Their gazes snap together. Emil tries to melt away, but Lair intercepts, plants herself in Emil's path, and demands an explanation. The witch slashes the air with her staff, tracing a pulsing, glowing circle as she hisses she'll set the rabbit girl alight, while Keela stands nearby with arms crossed, scowling with simmering irritation. Even Ralph oozes menace. Lur snaps his fingers and snarls, you don't just forgive that. The team surges at the guildmaster, panic exploding across his face as he bolts, scrambling to outrun their wrath. He let out a raw breath as relief crashed over him. He was lucky he hadn't taken Anna with him. Gratitude roared through me, our correspondence peeled back the veil and let me finally see the true essence. Anna whips her broom across the shop stairs and hails Shura with a grin. Her face beams with joy as she leans in, breathless, asking him how his adventures went. He declares it incredible and offers to spin the tale. She lights up and lanes in, eager to drink every word. They spill every gut-wrenching detail and admit the last few days have been brutal. Anna's eyes flashed with admiration as she hailed his guts for daring to face the fearsome killer bare head-on. Chiru's face went crimson as he confessed, the Azure Flash team took down the bear, I only helped a little. She roared she was the linchpin, declaring they'd have lost without her. They let a knock crash against the door, and a voice thunders his name. He throws the door open and sees Sankara, who instantly barrels into him with a fierce, crushing hug. He buries his face against her heaving chest as she cries. The mayor asks if he's okay, alarmed because she damaged the bear during the mission. He chokes for air, Sankara dives in, eyes locked on his shallow, ragged breaths as panic floods her. He feels hands clamp around his throat. He yanks Shura off and air floods back into his lungs. He snaps at her to calm down, assuring her the travelers protected him, and Sankaris lets out a relieved sigh. Her fury cooled to a simmer. She leaned in and pressed him. How did the mission go, and did the blue spark bring back anything valuable from the journey? Shira grins and declares, if the goods land on time, everyone will swarm to see them. He's staging a surprise reveal of brand new products. The mayor, calm as stone, repeats his words and proclaims to Shira he no longer has to hide what he's really been doing. She closed in and whispered, probing whether his ability to stash things was a simple skill or the work of a hidden relic. She returns ghost white and dodges the question like it's a thrown knife. He snaps, "What do you mean?" Sankara only smiles and insists he won't be fooled, and she shoots back that, rare as the gift is, she's already crossed paths with others who possess it. She insisted that's exactly how she understood it, and the moment she first met him a fierce spark flared inside her. Sheriff's gut screamed it, something was wrong with him. The cornered young man agreed with Nixai, then asked, "Is that women's intuition at work?" The mayor snaps no and confesses she lied to him on purpose to test her theory, admitting she really knew no one else without abilities. From the very first moment, coincidences swarmed him so relentlessly she couldn't believe they were accidents. Shira froze for a heartbeat, then yelped, astonishment ripping through her voice. Senka plants a steady hand on Ella's shoulder and warns that business smiles often hide lies, urging him to guard his secrets like gold. The young man owns up to his lapse in attention and vows to sharpen his focus so that mistake never happens again. Sankara snaps, "What new products is he going to sell?" And Anna jumps in, eyes bright, declaring she's interested too. The mole locks a cryptic stare, then thrusts a hidden object into the light. The mayor staggers back, disbelief slamming into him. He can't believe this is actually happening. Senka lets out a long, victorious sigh and stretches, grinning with relief after 3 straight successful workdays. Suddenly a liar barrels into the store, greets everyone, and asks if everything is all right. He prowls the shop, eyes cutting across every counter to judge how the task held up, and Meska slips in behind him to murmur a warm, quiet greeting to the merchant. The warrior's gaze snapped across the shop, immaculate, every shelf arranged with military precision. Shira proclaims Anna deserves all the thanks, she's been the one hauling this mess back into order lately. He studies them for a long beat, then catches the sorceress shyly tugging the liar's sleeve. Every exchange between them screams, "We're dating," and I'm bursting with joy. Lur's burning with a touch of envy, but he swears M told him a high-ranking figure from the Adventurers Guild is headed for the city. The merchant's voice rings out, sealing it, confirmed. Lair says he hopes the guild can be trusted. Shira's interest snaps awake, her eyes sharpening. He leans in, grilling the traveler. Are some guilds playing dirty? Lyra nods, voice sharp. Even the mightiest guilds can be tainted by a rotten reputation. 2 warriors whose names chill the soul, Click Venendraken and the Devil's Trident. He warns the Rotter's Labyrinth is the worst. Meskin gives a slow, grim nod. Anna's eyes slammed wide as realization hit. This was the guild Sankara had mentioned earlier. Silence slams into the room as Shiro snaps. Did the mayor know the guild had such a rotten reputation? Lyra admits she might not have had it. Not even a battle-hardened adventurer could pry that kind of news loose from a tiny, gossip-starved town. Sherry insists this place is a dead zone, no phones, no social networks, so expect to be missing pieces of the story. Anxiety gnawed at him as the arriving guild drew near. He feared they'd unleash trouble and clung to the desperate hope that everything would end well, especially for the sake of Saint Cora. Anna snapped, "Where's the guild representative? Did he get lost?" She narrows her eyes, wondering if he's stalling on purpose, while Shira, cool and steady, shrugs and says he probably just got distracted. The road from the other city isn't complicated. Nothing's decided yet. Sankara has been holding vigil at the city gates since yesterday. The child snaps, it'd be great if he showed up already, and nods in eager agreement. The bell slams through the air, the day is over. Shira tells Anna it's all for today, and Anna nods in response. The young man sees a smiling customer off, key clenched in his hand as he thinks it's still early, though he's already decided to shut the shop. Just as he reaches for the lock, a sharp knock slices the silence and he throws the door open. He must track down a long-haired girl in uniform, twin sabers slung at her hips. She pins him with a grave stare, politely apologizes for being late, and asks him to show her the item. Shine flashed a grin, beckoned her to look around to her heart's content, then snapped the matchbox open in a heartbeat. Her eyes shine with curiosity as he urges her to step up and try it herself. A spark explodes in her eyes, her face lighting up as she bursts out that she's heard countless rumors about this product and proclaims it incredible. She snatches another package and demands to know what's inside. They tell her it's a rescue blanket that fights off the cold far better than any regular blanket. He enfolds her in it, memories roaring up of how, at the start, every daring adventure and even the mayor himself couldn't get enough of him. She beams, astonished as a cozy warmth floods her, even through the paper-thin fabric clinging to her. The girl jabbed a finger at another exhibit, eyes wide with curiosity, and Sir leaned in with a grin to reveal it was a complex water bottle. He parades out more products with contagious zeal while she hangs on every word. She thanks him for the explanation, checks her watch, and says she has to go, she's running late for a meeting. He hollered a quick goodbye and tore off, leaving Shiro and Trit behind. A few days later, Anna storms into the store, screaming Shiro. With wild eyes and trembling hands, the boy flinches and immediately blurts what happened. Sanka threaded through the city when a stranger cut in front of her, snapping, "Are you the mayor?" His clipped words and cold stare radiating pure menace. He spits out the truth, he's an inspector sent by the capital's Adventurers Guild, and Sankara recoils, a cold knot warning her trouble is beginning. Sharavane Hannah barreled toward the meeting place, and Sankara, the young man who'd been waiting to meet him, never expected it to happen so quickly. Sankara had planned to stroll the city and weave through the market with Sharavane first, then only go to Shiri's shop. They step onto the scene, and everything flips into something they never saw coming. Shur bursts into a jaw-dropping scene. Anna locks eyes with him and snaps that they need his help right now. Inside the Silver Moon Guild, he finds Sankara doubled over and sick, the Azure Lightning team bristling with fury, and a dark figure standing with its back to Shuru. He wonders if it's the inspector. Sankara leans in, voice barely above a whisper, warning Shura this man won't be easy to handle and urging him to stay calm. Provoked, a tremor crawls through her, but she clamps it down, slipping into a confident, battle-tested smile forged by years of handling difficult people, and planting her feet, refusing to budge. Relief floods Sankara as she thrusts Shura forward to Gabais, the capital's guild inspector. Gabais' voice slides out calm but wired with tension, and she crowns Shura the pride of the city. He flashes a wide grin and greets Gabi and Anna like old friends reunited. The inspector's disbelieving smile says it all. He'd been expecting a seasoned traitor. He sneered, calling her Shura's rookie, and Anna flinched, recoiling a step as fear flooded her. Shir pins a brittle smile to her face, burying the sting of irritation beneath it. Gab zeroed in on the Silver Moon Guild, sneering that the place was a filthy mess, and snarling the half-breeds couldn't even clean up after themselves. Till snaps, I clean every day in my free time. Gabai scoffs, mocking her attempts like they're a joke, while Sankara watches every move, teeth clenched and fists trembling as he fights to choke down a rising tide of rage. Jebai unleashed a brutal ad that shames people who can't work, brazenly proclaiming they don't deserve to live. Kila and Ale trembled with rage as the mayor stepped between them and the man, brandishing his garden shears and offering to show them to him. He leans in to inspect the matches, and for the first time admiration sparks in his eyes. He nods, it's built solid, and it pulls a hopeful smile across 10KR's face. Jebasun hurls the map onto the floor, collapses into a seat, and proclaims he'll open a branch of labyrinth robbers right in the city. Shock pinned Sankara as Ale urged him to fling a match into the guild, and Gabas ignored her. Right after, the inspector slams down his demands. Only his guild may operate in the city, and every other guild must shut its doors at once. He pins Isle with a venomous stare and snarls, "Got anything to say about your tiny, weak guild?" Rage flared in her throat as she spat. His name is Silvermoon, but a cold voice sliced through her. The name doesn't matter, he still needs to be turned off. Mill lunges at him in a flash of fury, but Shankara yanks her back again as the inspector keeps demanding his due, flatly insisting on a complete tax exemption. He spits that this backwater offers him nothing, he needs cash to found a new guild. He barks that only he can sell matches, claims Shira's entire stock as his, then smirks and slams a few boxes onto the table. The Shrike locks onto him, stunned, completely unable to grasp why he's doing this. Gibbisley stepped close, suspicion razor-sharp in his voice as he sneered, "A merchant, you fool," and the barb ignited the inspector's anger. He closes the distance and declares he'll snap up every single maff share the store has. Sanker lunges to intervene, sneers down at her and snaps, "What do you want?" The mayor draws a hard line. He refuses to sell exclusively to one company, even if it would benefit the city. Gabo scoffs at her naivety, sneering that NRI's remote location chokes off any chance of trade. His guild could blanket the whole kingdom with goods. His sly smile screamed money, and Shura took it all in. Shiru crosses his arms, admits the offer piques him but declares he's not interested, stresses the goods are strictly restricted, and refuses to hand over everything to a single guild. Sankar exhales, relief flooding him, and announces he can't allow a branch to open in the city. Gibbis's face twists into pure rage. Rage boiling over, he hurls a glass bottle at Sankara. It sails wide as he roars, "Who do you think I am?" He declares the city's guild is doomed to crumble anyway, and watches the liars enrage the simmers. Shirin drew a sharp breath, strode in and shouted for everyone to freeze, then jabbed at the nearby forest, the prowling monsters, and the glinting rare herbs. "This place is priceless to the city." He leans in, grinning. Travelers have already claimed this place as their base. He cracked a savage, mocking laugh, then yanked Sheru forward by his tie. Call him a fool and sneer that his city adventures are just a joke, amusing, dead-end, and with no prospects. They swore the big city starved them, so they bolted here and staked claims in places with almost no competitors. Rage boiled in Neska gross. The liar thrust up a placating hand, motioning for her to calm down. Her aura surges, rippling outward like a shockwave, and everyone nearby reels under its raw, irresistible force. Hivas presses on, blasting the city's price as absurd and igniting the mayor and Mel's fury, then corners Shura and demands his plan. The mini branch could pull the city back from the brink. Now everything that was to come rode on Shira. The young man begged for time to think, but a swift response crashed over him. There could be no delay. The inspector's sly smirk blooms. He points at Anna and snaps that if she agrees, he'll take a seasoned pro instead of the girl. Silence swallows Shira and Aisley snaps. What did Jib just say? Convinced he's in charge, Gabos bellows again that he'll swap this expendable boy and those unclean half-humans for real workers. Shur pins the furrier, then without warning slams a fist into Jeva's face and sends him flying. Shur steps back, roaring, and instantly lunges at the man as everyone around freezes in shock. Mid-argument, Sheriff's gut was slammed by the exact same cold punch he'd felt the day he walked away from his job. The manager taunted the new hire. He was literally trying to emulate him, until Shura snapped and stormed in to shut it down. Gabai's memory snaps back to his former boss, who, voice blazing with rage, spat those words at him. He decked the inspector with a brutal hit, then rocketed away. The Azure Flash team froze, eyes wide with shock, while Amal stood nearby. Sankara storms forward, agitation crackling in her voice, and asks if Gabais has been acting strangely toward her. The mayor falters, voice cracking, and finally blurts out that Gabais had harassed her. Rage twists Shura's face as he yanks Jebus by the hair. Sankar pleads for him to stop, insisting it makes no sense anymore. Priest Ralph staggers, lost and shouting for Shura. Shura scans the scene, and when Ralph insists he's only there to help, Shura nods and keeps dragging the inspector along with him. He flashes back to the exact way he carried himself the day he left his job. Ralph Shur-backed hoist as he plunged a dagger into our backs. He rockets headfirst into the guild's counter, the impact so brutal the floor shudders beneath him. Shira declares she despises violence, yet plants her feet and refuses to back down. Stand between your employee and anyone who dares to humiliate them. The moment they start using the mayor, Sankari and Anne are overcome with emotion, tears springing to their eyes. Shur pummels Gabos again, snarling that he's too weak to remain silent about it. Rash sprints to Shiro, flings himself into a tight embrace, and bursts into tears. Jevaz explodes to his feet, bellowing he'll exact revenge on the city and gloating loudly. Gabas bellows that he's the leader of the Labyrinth Raiders, freezing everyone around with a menacing glare. St. Car locks him in a glacial stare and snaps, "Do you really want to start a war with my city?" The mayor warns that if the situation escalates, she'll summon Marcus Bashar, the territory's ruler. The inspector goes ghost white, stammers, and scrambles backward. He lanes in, voice ice cold. "Give me priority in the sale of matches, and I'll wipe this incident from my mind." Shira Yanks suspects Gabo probably has hearing problems. He never hears a single thing she says. Shiri snaps, "No sale," and warns that anyone who dares scheme will see the Jibus Guild destroyed, Sankara and the adventurer plant their feet, unyielding. Shiro's scream rips the air. "Do you understand, Jevis?" Jevis buckles to his knees. He throws out a deal. She snaps that she'll now pick her business partners with razor-sharp caution. Gabba Skiff strides up to the skiers, his voice cleaving the silence as he calls on them to discuss the guild's division. Sankar shrugs, flicks it away like a nuisance, and refuses to give it a second thought. Lair erupts into raucous laughter, taunting Gibbos that his greed has eaten him alive and left him with nothing. The inspector roared at Lyra to shut up, fury exploding as he spat, "You're a worthless adventurer." Lyra yanks Gabas by the collar and drives him into sudden, stunned silence. Shiro pleads with Lyra not to resort to violence. Lyra snaps, hurling the reminder that Shiro hit Gabas too. Then Hurl skibs out, bellowing that he's worthless. The warrior thrusts a finger at the capital and storms away from us, fury driving every stride. The liar, Emo, and Ralph grumble, never satisfied, they demand more. The mayor brushes them off and urges everyone to ignore them. Sankara Glands is a rock-solid roof when you need shelter. Sudden knocks slam the door, yanking the liar's attention. He huffs in annoyance, sure Gabby has come again. He yanks the door open and finds, impossibly, a girl who has somehow already slipped into Shuru's workshop. She asks to be let in and says she knows the mayor is here. This was the very thing that pulled her here. Her eyes snap and she recognizes the girl's face instantly, while Sankara steps forward, introduces himself, burning to hear the stranger's name. She spits out the truth. I'm Mirage, the envoy of the Guild of Transitions. Liar's eyes snap wide the instant they realize the name carries weight. Sankara snaps at Mirage, why have you come? Raja flashes a confident grin, announces she's opening a guild branch in Nika, and asks for a favor. She holds an icy calm as Sankara pins her with a wary stare, suspicion flaring. Did she really hatch the idea of the branch? Imavaru Sankara lurked behind Shiro. This reeks of a trap, so keep your guard razor sharp. The mirage flickered, then whipped around and thrust a hand forward. Emil's fingers shook as she blurted, asking if the rabbit girl worked in the guild, and the rabbit girl jumped back in fright. She barely had time to answer when Nay barged in, declaring she wanted to talk to her too. Nai revealed that if Silver Moon merges with her guild, Emil's salary will skyrocket. She hurled her hand into the air and vowed a huge pay raise. Emo's eyes followed the motion, her heart pounding and her gaze snapping wide in stunned surprise. Curios the rabbit tilted her head, whiskers trembling with doubt. Could her salary really be raised? Nay, without missing a beat, declared she'd now receive 5 times more. Nay's confident smile left no doubt. Emo flinched, staggered back, then dropped to a knee before her as she proclaimed the Silver Moon Guild would join the Fairy Blessing as a branch. Her voice cracked, raw and trembling as she seized Nay's legs and pleaded with the mayor to let her make her choice. Sankar froze, stunned into silence, and the mayor, after a heartbeat, strode over to press Shira for her opinion. The young man crossed his arms and insisted they hear Nay's proposal before deciding. San Cardina nodded and ushered everyone into her office for a conversation. They sat huddled with steaming teacups as the mayor leaned in, voice sharp, and asked Nay why she'd chosen that path. Nay burst out that just days ago adventurers cracked open a dungeon and unearthed a strange map that sketched a whole continent no one knew existed, and she's convinced it was left by an ancient, magic-wielding civilization. Nace's eyes sparkled as she declared this could be a game-changing discovery. Then she turned to Shira and Sankara, her face hardening as she announced the most important thing would be revealed now. The map pinpointed the ancient sites in the forest east of the city. Maybe the lost kingdoms. She unfurled the map across the table and pressed her palms down on it. Sankara's breath hitched as she cried, "Is this really true?" Her voice quivered with stunned disbelief. He declared it with iron certainty, warning that the labyrinth marauders are already eyeing the city, ready to seize the ruins for themselves. She snatched the tiny figurine from the table and flipped it, revealing the attackers toppled and defeated. They lunged for total control, but the inspector slammed down ironclad conditions that stopped them cold, and the Negrind and Setter guilds stepped forward, pledging to team up with the city for honest research. They zeroed in on this city as the perfect stage for their plan. Its prime location and one game-changing detail sealed the deal. Curiosity flared in Shira. She leaned in and asked what made the city special, and Nay grinned. It's the silvery moon that drenches the city in light. That's what makes it stand out. If accepted, they'll graft it onto the fair's blessing as a new branch, ditch a from-scratch rebuild, and launch the restoration into overdrive. The Shiri store blew her away. Its brilliant products looked like the perfect tools to catapult their business. Grinning, she dropped into a low bow and suggested Sherwood open a branch of the store inside the guild. Her confident gaze pinned Saint Kara, who swallowed nervously. The mayor demanded to know what they'd want in exchange for opening a guild branch in this city. Her voice cut like a knife. The girl cringed, cheeks flushing, and shyly spelled out the problems Gabais had caused. Seething, Nez snapped at the demands, and Shira watched in shock as the inspector, after approving the branch, still humiliated him. Sanchez spat that she'd also suffered Jebus's abuse. He was a monster. Shock slammed into him. He spat it was unacceptable, even though he'd done the exact same thing himself. She declared Amel's consent alone would be enough, no new base needed, only a safe in for travelers, and she vowed fair pay and city regulations set the taxes, and Sankar dissected every clause with surgical precision. I asked her name to be sure, offered my hand with a half-smile, and said we'd make an incredible team. She shook it warmly, eyes sparkling as she thanked me for the trust and support. Bleeding cash and teetering on collapse, the Silver Moon Guild folded into the country's largest guild. For several days the Sure store pulsed with life, running like clockwork as a steady stream of customers poured through its doors. Midway through helping a customer, a man asked Anna to bring large matches. She fell silent, froze dead still, panic etched across her face. Shira called her again. Silence met him, so he closed the gap and leaned in to whisper by her ear. She jumped, whirled toward him, apologized breathlessly, and asked if he wanted something. Shura let out a quiet sigh, repeated to her that he needed large matches, and bolted off to hunt them down. But his focus evaporated again in a heartbeat. He rifled through the coins, realized she'd drifted miles away in thought, called her name again, and when she didn't answer, asked if she was okay. She cocks her head in a nervous twist, tiny hands quaking. She hesitates, unsure if she should speak. She crumpled to her knees, tears carving tracks down her cheeks, and in a ragged, trembling voice confessed she needed money. Coins clattered to the floor. She dropped to her knees again and gripped his hands. He cradled them gently, relief blazing in his eyes, and asked, "How much do you need?" Anna's voice faltered as she squeezed out an apology, pleading she didn't want to disturb anyone. Shira's eyes softened as he cupped her head and stroked it gently, smiling as he reassured her, "Everything's fine." She insisted, "Don't blame yourself, asking for help is true courage," and she cherished that truth with everything she had. He blurted, "Is your mother okay?" Anna froze, her body went rigid and pain bloomed across her face. Her reply died on her lips as Liara barreled into the room and bellowed, "Shira, come eat." The liar slammed to a stop when he saw her face and blurted an apology for interrupting. Sankara burst in and pressed the young man to recount the city's development. She froze the instant she realized what was unfolding and instantly apologized. Liar asked if they should come back later. She whirled to Anna and blurted, "What do you think?" She swept her tears away, flashed a brave smile, and declared that everything was fine, everyone could stay. He swept his gaze over the company and decided they'd be better off sitting together, leaning in to hear her and leaping in to help. The liar slammed his fist against his chest and vowed they'd pull it off. Ralph knew this sort of thing inside out. Sankar seized the reins as mayor and promised Anna she could count on her the moment any trouble surfaced. Tears welled in the girl's eyes as the sly one stepped forward and offered to help. Tears streaming, Anna finally choked out that her mother had fallen ill. Right then, back home, her mother erupted into a brutal, hacking cough, and the flowers Ona had picked started to wilt. Anna still remembers being 4 and blissfully living in a tiny house, perched at the table with her mom and dad while her favorite teddy dozed loyally at her side. One day everything flipped, war slammed into the city and ripped everyone's life apart. Flames devoured their cozy home, turning her favorite toy into a heap of ash as mom crushed her daughter into a fierce embrace, shielding her amid the smoldering ruins. Then her father appeared, clutching a small, threadbare, filthy teddy bear in his hands, grief etched across his face, and the weight of losing everything crushing them both. Nothing hurt Anna like watching soldiers haul her father away. He crushed her and her mother in a fierce hug, vowed he'd return soon, then turned and left, leaving them alone together. The war raged for just 6 months, years bled away, and Anna's father never came home. At 6, her mother dropped the bomb. They'd have to uproot and move to another city. She rooted herself to the spot and refused to budge. Fear clawed at her, convinced that if they left, Dad wouldn't be able to find them when he returned. Seeing Anna terrified, her mother was stunned into silence. She crushed her into a trembling embrace and sobbed, while Anna froze, unable to find words or know how to act. Soon they burst from the city, crossed the border, and pressed on day and night until Nika stood before them. The curious girl pressed her mother, "Why did we come here?" And the mother answered, "This is a place where the war has ended. Here we can be safe." Life in the border town was a brutal, unending struggle, and Anna refused to lose anyone else. Her mother toiled in the fields, skipping her own meals so Anna never went hungry. With each passing day, her mother's health unraveled, leaving her frail and consumed by sickness. She kept apologizing to Anna, and guilt gnawed at the girl for upsetting her mom so much. Night swallowed the tiny room as Anna clutched her teddy bear to her chest and sobbed bitterly on the floor until her tears ran dry. She vowed to tear down her whole life and reinvent herself at breakneck speed. She dropped the toy, locked eyes with her reflection, clutched the handful of blooms she'd scraped together, and strode out to sell flowers. Her relentless hustle exploded into victory. She won the city's permission to sell her goods. Every morning Anna bursts out the door with a basket for flowers and doesn't come home until the evening has settled in. She haunted the market every day until one day Shura strode in the moment he bought flowers from her. His presence detonated in her chest and snatched all her attention. Shura didn't just buy her flowers, he hunted down a job for her too. Anna lifted the heavy burden that had haunted her mother, lighting up her face with pure joy. She bowed her head and whispered thanks to the gods she believed in, praying with a fierce, grateful heart. When Anna received her first salary, 10 silver coins, a grin split her face and she knew instantly where every coin would go. She tore into the market and tracked down a traveler who'd once sworn he carried a potion that could cure any disease. Anna blew through every last coin to buy it, pressed the potion into her mother's hands, and declared Shura himself had given it, had even drunk from it, and that it brimmed with hope. Elation shattered into crushing despair when the potion failed to heal her mother. Even when she finished it, despair still devoured Anna. She poured every ounce of herself into saving her mom from illness, and the brutal truth slammed into her. Everything boiled down to money. If this does the trick, her mother can finally reach a place where real help is waiting. Anna whirled to Shura, a silent plea blazing in her eyes, begging him to save her mother, even if his heart wasn't hers. Heart in her throat, she blurted, "Can you lend me some money?" certain he'd judge her. Her breath caught. Cher didn't mock her. He cupped her head and stroked her hair, and warmth flooded Anna. She hadn't felt this alive in years as he hung on every word of her story. Shuru drew a long, steady breath, his warm eyes radiating sympathy. Anna bowed her head, her tiny body quivering, and her sorrow-streaked face laid bare how much she'd been through. Silence swallowed the room until Lair hammered his fist into the wall, cracking bricks, his eyes blazing with fury as he thundered, "Who sold this terrible potion?" Rage crackled as Lair balled his fists and flung them into the air, vowing that whoever deceived him would pay for tricking a child. He'd strike them 100 times straight. Before he could even speak, Nesk stormed up and smacked him over the head with a stick, barking that he mustn't break other people's things. Meanwhile, Ralph slid in beside Anna and, calm and confident, began talking to her. Ralph's words landed like a gut punch. The potion Anna had given her mom couldn't cure diseases, and Anna's eyes flew up, stunned, as she blurted, "What do you mean?" The cleric's voice stayed steady as he declared, "The potion only mends surface wounds, only special antidotes neutralize poison. Not a single potion in the world could cure diseases." Anna blinked, confusion crashing over her, then feigned innocence and denied it. The traveler who'd sold her the potion had promised her mother would recover. Ralph's team hung their heads and choked out apologies, admitting the adventure had tricked them with a worthless product. Anna echoed the priest's words, slow and deliberate, each syllable striking like proof she'd grasped their true meaning. Tears burst into her eyes and streamed down her cheeks when the harsh truth hit her, and Ralph felt his heart wrench with pain as he watched her suffer. Rage exploded in the liar. He crashed into the window and sent shards flying. He roared that he'd unmasked a fraudster and sworn to punish him, called on Ralph to handle it, and Neska and Keela leapt in beside him to corner the criminal. The others marched off with Anna to visit her mother, while Shira trailed behind, her face carved from stone. They walked on as Shura replayed Anna's warning about the illness, and Sankara mulled the pharmacist's grim verdict that this disease destroys lives, until the truth slammed into her. Shura steered Rout out of earshot, voice low and urgent, and demanded to know what had happened. Learning from Ralph that it creeps through your body, slowly devouring you, limbs going dead and every scrap of strength bleeding away. Those scientists were still stumped. They couldn't crack how it spread. Shira shook as the truth crashed down. This threat was far deadlier than she'd ever imagined. A few paces later, Anna jabbed a finger at a tiny house. Shiru gaped. How did Anna trudge out to the outskirts every day to water those lonely flowers for her mom? Anna drew a steady breath, flung the door open with a radiant smile, cried, "I'm home." In a warm, loving voice, ushered Shura inside and proudly introduced him to her mother. Wobbly but determined, Stella hauled herself upright and met his gaze with a tender, kind look, then, voice barely a whisper, she thanked Shira for taking care of Anna. He declared he owed her a thank you. Right then Stella fought to haul herself upright, every muscle screaming against her condition. Stella blurted a sheepish apology, cheeks burning as she tugged nervously at her disheveled clothes. Anna and Shiro sprang into action, urgently imploring her not to overexert herself. Her health mattered more than anything. She bristled, insisting it was rude to lie in bed when guests arrived, until Anna's voice sliced through the protest and she snapped, "Rest." Stella's gaze snapped to Sankara, who revealed she was the city's mayor. Worry clenched her features as Stella blurted, "Why did I come?" Ralph snapped that they had to see Anna's situation with their own eyes. They cared. Stella blurted out an apology for the inconvenience she'd caused. Sankar's chest tightened as the bitter truth struck her. The one she regretted was herself. Helplessness carves the mayor's face. She can't feed all the needy, and newcomer Stella, barely settled, is struck by fierce admiration. Stella demanded, "When did you befriend the mayor, Anna, and why did you keep it a secret?" Anna flashed a smile and declared she'd met not only Sankara but also Shura, Ralph, Lur, Keela, and Nesk. Amazing adventurers, she beamed with a broad smile, thrilled to have so many friends, and warmth flooded Stella's soul as she watched her daughter's happiness. Warmth surged through Aa's chest as her daughter's joy lit up the room. She shot a quick "Have you eaten?" at her mom, then leapt into the kitchen, pledging to brew a steaming pot of soup for the guests. Stella vowed she'd handle any prep, but a man jumped in, insisting she had no meat and that she loved cooking too much to let anyone else do it. She declared she'd head to the river to fetch water, and Ralph jumped up to go with her. Stella watched them for a long beat, then beckoned Sankara outside for a hushed conversation. Shura edged closer, locked his gaze on her, and waited for her to speak first. Stella froze, hesitating for a heartbeat. She squared her shoulders, fixed him with a steady, confident stare, and laid it out. She wanted to ask him for a favor. She pinned him with a hard, steady stare and demanded, "If anything happens to me, will you take care of my daughter?" Shira's jaw dropped at the sudden request. She froze mid-breath, words choking in her throat. Stella watched him stagger from her words, shot out a quick apology for bursting in, maybe selfishly, and felt the cold truth. She had almost no time left. Fear gnawed at her over Anna's future, her gaze clouding with sorrow as she asked, voice trembling, whether the girl had already told him about the illness. She nodded and Mom leaned in, whispering, "Did Anna cry when she talked about it?" He gave the nod as Anna had been sobbing before it even began, and Stella squeezed her eyes shut and drew a deep, steadying breath. She'd feared this for ages. She watched Anna fight with everything she had. Even as her strength bled away, work became impossible, and she had to cling to the girl just to survive. Her heart shattered. She, a mother, crumbled when she couldn't help her child. The most painful thing was watching Anna force a smile through the effort, pretending everything was fine so she wouldn't let herself worry. In recent days, Stella's gaze snagged on something she'd never noticed before. They were talking when Anna's face suddenly burst into real joy, and it snapped her attention. Curiosity surged through her. She leaned in and blurted to her daughter, "Why are you so happy?" She beamed and announced she was overjoyed. Now that she had a very kind older brother, she was bursting with happiness. Staring at Shura, Stella's world snapped into focus. He was the spitting image of Anna's father. When she saw him enter, a cold jolt lanced through her. She felt as if the very man who'd once walked away had just come back. Shura's chest clenched and he stumbled out an apology as the sick realization hit that he was standing in for Anna's real father, utterly awkward. Stella flashed a fragile smile and waved him off, saying, "Don't apologize." She meant something entirely different. She confesses his presence pulls the fading face of the man she was starting to lose back into focus, and that memory steadies her. Tears flooded her eyes and her voice cracked as she proclaimed with unshakable certainty that when her time comes, she'll meet her husband. His eyes snapped wide and he demanded, "What do you mean?" Stella exhaled, her face eerily calm, and confessed the illness had stolen most of her time. Her body wouldn't withstand much longer. She clawed her way to her feet, determination blazing in her eyes, and begged Shura once more to take care of Anna when she was gone. Anna wore fierce courage like armor, but inside a little girl still huddled, ready to cry. Mid-sentence, Stella lurched. Exhaustion slammed into her and almost sent her sprawling, so she snapped a quick step back to steady herself. He shot forward and steadied her as she nearly tumbled. For a breathless beat, their eyes locked. Jolted by her sudden closeness, he blurted, "Are you all right?" His voice tight with worry. Stella, still dazed, gave a barely perceptible nod, and he gently eased her back onto the bed. Something snagged his attention, so he dared ask if he could briefly touch her foot. She flushed crimson the instant he asked. Heat flooded her cheeks and her heart pounded. Mortified, yet she still agreed with her eyes clamped shut, clueless why he asked, while Shira watched every move. Before long, certainty slammed into him. His suspicions were true. Stella's eyes snapped open and she shot back, "What do you mean?" She swallowed, voice cracking, and blurted, "Do you, like my legs?" She tangled in her words. He flushed, hastily denied it, and insisted it wasn't about that at all. Understanding cracked open in him. He saw what had wrecked this fate and even how to set it right. Stella's eyes shot wide in pure shock. She'd never imagined treatment could even exist. Tears streamed down her cheeks as she stifled sobs, because deep inside she clung to life and couldn't bear leaving her tiny, defenseless daughter alone in the world. Shura seized her hands like a lifeline, eyes steady, and vowed she wouldn't die, that when the dust settled she'd be able to live with Anna. The bedroom door burst open as Sankara strode in, snapping, "Are you finished talking?" with Anna and Ralph right behind her. They gaped as Shura clenched his hands in a bold, confident gesture. Sankar and Ralph stood speechless, eyes fixed on the boy, unable to decide what to think. Shura freezes, panic clawing at his mind as he frantically scrambles for words to explain everything. We couldn't make sense of it. Sankara loomed like a predator, pure menace, and Ralph gripped his weapon, poised and waiting for trouble. The men froze, baffled and speechless as Stella kept wiping her tears, and relief crashed through Shira when she realized Stella had untangled the whole mess. A flash of the catastrophe her silence could unleash hit him. He cleared his throat, pulled his thoughts together, and explained, "In my country, the disease of a spoiled life is called barberry." The name ripped gasps from everyone, but he pressed on undeterred. They trace it back to the body being starved of vital vitamins. In severe cases, vitamin deficiency snatched sensation from hands and feet and turned people immobile, restore the missing vitamins, and life rushed back into their limbs. Anna's joy burst forward and she pressed, "Is there any medicine that can help my mother?" Shura's smile widened as she said, "Yes, such medicines exist." Remembering my grandmother's advice, her voice roars inside me, "Always rush to help anyone in need." Determination hit him. He unleashed his alchemy, swapped his cash for yen, and sprinted off to buy medicine. He reappeared a little later, brandishing a bottle of pills, and declared to Stella that, despite her simple appearance, these medicines could help her. The mayor and the priest pressed forward, eyes fixed on the bottle as curiosity crackled between them. Neither had ever seen anything like it. Stella froze mid-step and blurted, "How pricey is the medicine?" She smiled, waved his worries away, and declared her happiness reward enough. She wanted to argue, but he held his ground. He swore Anna had taken him under her wing when he first stumbled into the city, and now he was hell-bent on paying her back. He slid a pill and a glass of water into her hands. Stella's eyes brimmed with grateful tears as she swallowed the pill, hope igniting in her chest. A month raced by as the bell pealed, ushering in a fresh dawn. Anna strode home with Shura at her side. She swung the door open and her mother flashed a radiant smile. Spotting Stella on her feet, her eyes shot wide and she burst out, "Is Mom feeling better?" Stella flashed a warm smile and confessed, stunned that she felt shockingly well. He barreled over to Stella and asked if they'd team up for another bet, just like before. Stella shot back an instant yes, and from that night on mother and daughter slept side by side every night. They hurled themselves into each other's arms, tears of joy streaking down their cheeks. Meanwhile, Anisad still smooths each strand with surgical precision, and it sinks to its knees, voice raw as it apologizes for terrifying her so badly and vows they'll never be torn apart again. Shira lingered nearby, joy surging through him as he watched the two finally meet. His grandmother's face slammed into his mind, and he pictured her beaming with pride if she knew he'd saved someone. That same evening, the boy perched on his balcony, clutching a drink as he replayed the day's jaw-dropping events. When the vitamins kicked in, Stella roared back to full health. Finally, Anna could pierce the silence and reach her mother. "Whip up mouthwatering feasts, pluck vibrant blooms, and play however you like." Shuren watched the girl's strength surge and her joy rippled outward, igniting everyone around. The Silver Moon Guild leapt into official status after the fairies anointed them with a shimmering blessing. The Azure Flash Squad swooped into the forest to back the main guild, tearing through task after task. Shura ran the numbers and realized he'd raked in about 50 million yen in just 2 months. Keep this pace for a year, and he'd save enough to stop working altogether. He was daydreaming about a peaceful, work-free life at home when Shankar sprang up right behind him. She popped up behind him out of nowhere. He jolted so hard his drink sloshed, and she smiled and wished him good night. He trembled, voice a ragged mumble. She terrified him so badly his heart had nearly stopped. The mayor laughed, tossed out a quick apology, and asked what he'd been drinking. Shira grinned, announced it was a drink from his homeland, and pressed the cup into her hands. She eagerly accepted, and they burst into easy chatter as laughter punctuated each sip. Mid-conversation, the mayor's hand inched toward him as she weighed whether to pat him on the head. He barely opened his mouth when she lunged, wrapped him tight and cradled his head in her lap. He tried to protest. Shankara confessed he secretly craved compliments, and a warm, shy flush rose to his cheeks whenever he agreed. She snapped for him to be quiet, raked her fingers through his hair, and he asked if she'd drunk too much. Senkira beamed warmly, her voice alight as she said she was thrilled he'd come to the city. She wasn't after the reward, she promised him straight. If he ever needed anything, he only had to reach out. Shira stopped him dead and snapped that it wasn't worth it. He'd already done everything he could. Sankar locked eyes with him and said, "I understand." He sang, every note stripped clean of greed. Heat flooded Cairo's cheeks and she snapped that nobody should mistake her for a noble. She loved money, she was selfish, and her grandmother had drilled that into her. St. Car flashed a grin, declared his grandmother was probably someone extraordinary, then asked, "What's her name?" Eraizohamo exploded into action first. Shiro Paz barreled in right after. Sankara echoed the name, and her eyes snapped wide as realization hit. She yanked Shiri by the shoulders and shook him violently, snarling, "Are you the grandson of Ares, the immortal witch?" Shura's eyes snapped wide at her reaction, and he blurted, "Do you know my grandmother?" Sankar leaned in and said the whole continent whispered the immortal witch's name, yet only a handful had ever met her face to face. He was one of those rare few. Shura's brow nodded in confusion as Shankara blurted that she'd seen Arisa at last year's harvest festival. The witch had suddenly materialized in the city square, joyfully downing drinks and dancing with everyone. It hit me like a punch. 7 years had vanished since Grandma Shura disappeared. Just as he lunged to object, Holy Kara cut him off, eyes flashing as she remembered the witch who plucked fragments of stars and forged them into the magical sword called Mel Gibson. Shura froze as details crashed over him, and the sword's name yanked a buried childhood memory into the light. A famous actor walked into his grandmother's house, froze at his massive poster on her wall, asked about it, and she beamed, declared him her favorite, and pressed a kiss to the photograph. Sanka reeled, words stuttering as she confessed she simply couldn't believe her own grandmother was the witch. It clicked, he kept showing up with cryptic potions and bizarre relics. She leaned in, curiosity sparking, and asked if he'd seen his grandmother yet. Shuru shook his head, voice hollow. He hadn't seen her in many years. She burst onto the balcony, drew a deep, steadying breath, and bellowed, "I'm still alive." Just before she slipped back into her world, she darted into her grandmother's house, and now he's planted right on the floor of that very home. He froze before the altar holding her photograph, disbelief ripping through him. She couldn't possibly still be alive. His thoughts reeled as he studied the smiling old woman who loved taking photos, flashing a peace sign. Finally free from other people's thoughts, he drew a lungful of air, wrestled his feelings into place, stared at the photo like a map, and vowed he'd find her at the harvest festival. Determination coiled in his gut. He shot to his feet and plunged through the portal, hurtling back into another world as memories of yesterday's talk with Sankara, when he'd learned something astonishing, raced through his mind. She dropped a bomb. His grandmother wasn't just strange. She was a famed, legendary witch, and the mayor mentioned her disappearance. She told Chiru she understood his frantic rush to find her, but urged him to stay with Nina a little longer. His grandmother had appeared at last year's harvest festival. Shira's breath hitched as she grasped the truth. If it had happened once, it could happen again. Grandma lives for holidays. She's showing up this year, no question. Sankara knew this celebration would be legendary. The city was turning 120, the mayor was rolling out a colossal anniversary spectacle, and he'd been personally summoned to help. A few weeks later, when only 2 months remained until the holiday, Shuru, a diehard festival fan, was already trembling with anticipation. He grabbed St. Carr's invite with a grin, then his brain scrambled, no clue how to wow everyone, and he dropped the food idea since the place would already be packed with stalls and contests. The same tired games left him cold, identical everywhere, so he spent ages wrestling with what to do next. He clawed at his head in irritation, scouring his past for even a single new idea. A lightning bolt of inspiration hit him. He snatched up a few cameras and barreled off to shoot. Garignat burst back from the store. Shira snapped the equipment into place, and Anna's brow knitted in surprise as she blurted, "What's going on?" Shira flashed a grin, called it a fair question, then burst with excitement to reveal the cameras were for a brand new product, a thermal collar. Confusion clung to her like a stubborn shadow. Her confusion flickered. He seized the moment, demonstrated it on the spot, and asked her. He leveled the camera, snapped a shot in an instant, shoved the photo toward her. Her eyes flew open as she scrambled to fathom how her face had ended up on that sheet of paper. As the feeling inside her faded, Sherry snapped her head around and laughed in surprise. They later confirmed the device could instantly snap people and events into photographs, so it was the perfect chance to test it in action. He urged Anna to grin and fired off a flurry of shots as she beamed at the images, delight radiating from her. Soon she burned with the need to learn how to use it. Fumbling with the camera, she snapped a shaky photo of Shura and, beaming, asked if it came out okay. He worked like a man possessed, dialing in angles and light until the photo came out flawless. Spellbound, Anna's curiosity ignited, and she ached to snap more photos of him. The young man instantly caught the vibe, struck a few bold poses, then after only a handful of shots stepped back and made it brutally clear he was done. Anna's eyes snagged on another camera and she blurted, "What's that?" Sue grinned, a Polaroid, and Anna's jaw dropped at how many different cameras existed. The young man nudged her softly, stealing her attention. The instant her gaze hit him, he whipped out his phone, snapped a photo, and flashed a cheeky grin, teasing that he'd caught her off guard. The little girl snatched the photograph, scowled, and wailed that she looked ugly in it. A bolt of inspiration struck her, and she blasted Shura's name into the air. He spun around and she snatched a Polaroid, firing off a cheerful snap and grinning that it was her chance to catch him off guard. He cocked an eyebrow and shot back, "Is that your way of thanking me?" He locked onto the photo of him flashing a peace sign and his breath caught. He looked exactly like his grandmother. Stella burst into the store, relief flooding her face, and breathed a heartfelt thank you to Shura for taking care of her daughter that day. He grinned and asked, "How's the new place treating you? Are you settling in?" Still wiped out from the move. Stella shot him a grateful grin and declared his support had made it effortless for her. Shiro locked down a service apartment for her and her daughter just steps from the store. Anna pounced on the moment and quipped that her mom couldn't keep anything in order, even if her life depended on it. Stella's cheeks flamed as she shushed her daughter to be quieter. He offered a calm smile and promised he'd always be ready to jump in if they needed support. Shyness pins Anna to the spot, but she squares her shoulders and thanks Tim with fierce, honest gratitude. She tossed a teasing jab that he probably couldn't organize either, and it threw Shura off. He scratched his head and began to stammer out a shaky, uncertain explanation. She beamed at him and sent a bright, cheerful wave goodbye. Shiori answered with a swift wave back. I watched them stride ahead, peaceful satisfaction glowing in the curve of their smiles. The Silver Moon Guild has sworn its banner to the mighty Fairy Guild that bears the blessing. And Shira flashed back to that first visit, the silence shattered by Emil's raw sobs at her table. He stepped inside and the contrast hit him like a blow. The place was unrecognizable. A band of adventurers erupts into excited chatter, swapping hard-won tips and secret tricks about the forest. He gaped. The guild that had nearly been shut down 2 months ago now thundered with activity as one of the kingdom's busiest. Seeing him, he lunged forward and demanded, "Did you come here specifically to see her?" The rabbit girl leaned close, stroked Shura with a teasing touch and flashed a sly grin, purring, "Did you bring me something expensive and beautiful?" Shiro snapped and demanded she stop, but she just laughed and taunted him, saying if he truly wanted, she'd marry him and they'd live in lavish luxury. She pictured herself married, ensconced in a sprawling castle, and parading through town in gleaming carriages. Soar atop a dragon and unleash a sparkling rain of gold coins over the crowd below. Shiro slammed his refusal, but Ima wouldn't relent. She told him he could do anything he wanted with her, insisting that beneath her odd exterior, she was actually very sweet as she toyed with her collar. Her behavior shoved Shuruf into a frantic panic. He begged her to stop and, desperate to escape, blurted out, "Do you have somewhere you need to be?" Amal flashed a sly grin and announced she was taking a break, cutting Shira off before she could even answer. The rabbit girl slammed him against the wall and, eyes glittering in the quiet dark room, asked if he wanted to drink with her. They made a desperate dash for freedom, heaved the anchor overboard, and still refused. He eased her hand away as his grandmother's warning flared in his mind. Never be alone in a dark room with a woman who loses control after drinking. Her last wish echoed in the room. He'd only just discovered his grandmother was alive. The companions nearby erupted in laughter the instant they saw Ino do it again. The wide-eyed, naive rabbit beamed, while Shura still gripped her hand with iron resolve. If she hadn't shoved him, he'd have dragged her into the dark room himself. She leaned in, teasing that she could see it. Deep down, Shura cared for her. He went rigid, sweat beading on his forehead from her closeness, panic flaring as he recoiled. Shura screamed for help as an octopus's tentacles wrapped around him. A figure burst from behind the mill, Keela the scout, who landed a lightning kick that sent the girl rabbit sprawling. She rocketed into the air and plunged straight into a wooden barrel, whooping triumphantly as she declared the terrible octopus trap neutralized. Keela called out if everyone was okay, and the young man, tears of joy streaming, choked out that he was fine. Back in the guild tavern, adventurers hoisted frothing beer mugs and roared jubilant toasts. Shur clutched Killy breathless, thanking him for hauling him out of Isle's grasp as the cat girl grinned and warned that rabbits go wild under a full moon. The fur denied it, but the wizard Nesk was racked with regret for Shira, convinced their bond had fractured. Ralph teased that Miss Isle came within an inch of sinking her teeth into the garden shears like they were the forbidden fruit. The rabbit girl beamed and ripped into a chicken leg, proving it with every gleeful, crunching bite. Their jaws dropped and they blurted, "How did you end up here?" Hale smiled, voice cool and steady, "I don't like being on the sidelines." Chaos tore through Laegiel when 2 adventurers exploded into a brawl, and the crowd instantly swarmed to lay down bets on the victor. The stocks froze in place, the struggle died in its tracks. Lear burst into laughter and brushed it off. Arguments among adventurers were so routine, he treated them like a casual hello. He warned that tension in the city had been mounting lately. Shur demanded why, and Lair snapped that the forest expedition had recruited adventurers from every corner of the kingdom, the best of the best. 2 months bled away and not a single ruin surfaced, while brutal battles raged on every front. One traveler lunged through the churning water at his foe, who barely twisted free and instantly snapped back with a razor-sharp kick. They all looked wrecked, eyes hollow and shoulders slumped, and Lyre nodded, every muscle in him echoing that bone-deep exhaustion. In that tiny town, life stalled with nothing to do, restlessness gnawed at everyone. The girl hiding under the table lunged up and shoved Shura, and Shura instantly snarled, "Don't you lift my shirt again." A grimace carved across her face as she swore to him she would never act that way, vowing she'd never pull such a thing in front of so many people. Green shot a sly, faint grin and declared that when he spoke of a distraction, he meant Lair, exactly, sure didn't understand. The girl laughed, taunting, "You don't understand a thing," and dropped a pointed hint about BRS. Lair flushed crimson and stammered a refusal. He swore it wasn't true, but the other lined in, pressed him harder, and demanded to know why he was so upset. Nesca slammed her heel onto Liar's foot and ripped into him for spewing nonsense. He scrambled to explain, the sorcerers tightened their grip, and the warrior screamed as pain tore through him. The adventure's epic clash at last slammed to a thunderous halt. The moment she stepped in, her confidence slammed into the room. She locked eyes with everyone, leveled a cold glare, and snapped, "What was happening here?" They snapped into stillness and swore they hadn't thrown a single punch. The moment he saw Shura, he yelped an apology for bursting in so suddenly and froze, utterly blown away by how radiant she was. And zeroed in on Ale hiding under the table and barked for her to come out. The dazed girl trembled, confused, while a predatory grin curled his lips as he snapped, "Were you here the whole time? Why didn't you stop the fight sooner?" Isle's tamer offered nothing but silence, and no one swallowed it. In a flash, she yanked Ali outside as the beaten girl shrieked, crying for Shura to save the future wife and begging to take any punishment instead of a salary cut. When the dust settled, Lara strode over to Cher and made her request. He said he was scouring the forest for ruins when, by chance, he stumbled into a hidden clearing bursting with rare flowers. They laid the task before Shirwin. He lit up and eagerly volunteered to join. Lair leaned in and asked again if he was really sure. Shiro confirmed it with a grim nod. Now he's going to need protection. A fierce grin split the warrior's face as he vowed they'd become stronger than ever. At those words, everyone hoisted their mugs again and clinked them together, erupting into a cheerful toast. A gentle breeze slipped through the blooming field, and Shur froze, all locking him in place as his gaze swept the endless expanse of flowers, and a stunned smile split his face. Each blossom felt impossibly special to him. Nesca, the group's sorceress, crouches and cups the petals like a sacred secret, then declares in a calm, knowing voice, "This is Apsara, a rare species that grows only where the water is crystal clear." She warns, voice sharp, "These blooms crumble at a touch but hold the secret to the strongest healing herbs." When she finishes, the company exhales and sinks down among the flowers to rest, sprawled in the petals. Across the field, Lyra snaps into view, arms crossed and scowling, and the warrior grins, teasing that Lyra always knew the moment an opening came, Nesca and Killy would immediately crash out. Her eyes snap wide in confusion when the guy she cares about sits unnervingly calm, nearly nodding off, and he apologizes, admitting the relentless journey crushed him, and he just needs a little rest now. Lyra shoved his words aside and demanded they finish the work before sunset. Only after that could they rest peacefully for as long as they wanted. A week ago, the Azure Flash Guild stumbled onto a patch of impossibly rare flowers while exploring, and the moment they did, the whole team was charged with this mission. They discovered Apsara is the secret heart of the kingdom's most potent healing elixirs, coveted by every doctor and healer. On the way back, disaster struck. The flowers collapsed within minutes, petals sagging and drooping like exhausted flags. Their strength bled away before delivery, and Nesca frantically doused them and unleashed desperate magic to keep them fresh. Nothing worked, one failure after another, and the group teetered on the brink of throwing in the towel on the whole task. Lyra's eyes sparked with a daring plan. She spun to Shurub and pulled him into it. The boy wielded a one-of-a-kind spatial power. He could fold space and stash anything in hidden pocket dimensions. It swallows mountains of stuff and never even registers the weight. Everything inside stays perfectly preserved. Entombed in ice, it can't rot, and its power never dulls. Lyra scoffs, "There are already enough flowers." Then his head snaps up as he spots something unusual. She suddenly realizes Keela slept through the entire conversation and heard nothing. Before Lair can rouse her, the cat's ears prick at a strange sound, her expression hardens, and she snaps a warning that someone is approaching. Muscles coil as everyone snatches up their weapons. A sky-darkening swarm of Roarabitalis, titanic, nightmarish insects, descends over them, and Shur's eyes snap wide at the sight. The jumpers go rigid with astonishment at the massive insects, while the liar runs a mental tally, at least 17, and that count sparks fierce hope in him. The liar barks a single word and demands everyone freeze and fall silent. Sir crouches, eyes razor-sharp, studying the bison up close as he traces deep gashes and raw wounds scarring so many bodies. Nesca crouches, eyes razor-fixed on the cuts, and snaps the verdict. A wind force spell ripped these open. The group's cleric points to wet droplets still dripping from the wounds. The injuries are fresh. They scramble to figure out who attacked the insects when Brekhuka snaps that the beetles have zeroed in, and with no way out, she shoves Rolla forward to guard Polivka. Neska launched into a spell, and the sorceress snapped that she was already casting one. She whipped her staff, and a blazing arrow screamed from its tip. The blow sends several beetles careening into the flames as Roll rockets forward, throwing herself between them and Shira to shield her. Shura's told he's safe, but Keela hurls razor knives at the beetles. She reels as the blades ping off their armored shells and do no damage, and before she can react, the insects swarm around her. Nesk's help request flashes across the screen. The sorceress, Stonecom, instantly weaves a new spell and hurls a searing burst of flame that turns several more enemies to ash. He watches the insects recoil from flame, and fire igniting in his eyes, hatches a plan on the spot. Shira bolts away, and Ralph, panic shredding his voice, yells at her not to act rashly. The insect spray they used earlier won't stop these creatures. Shiro's grin explodes. He declares he's got a brand new trump card tucked up his sleeve. A young man rips a tiny lighter from his pocket and seizes a canister of gas. He snaps sparks together, birthing a roaring blaze that lashes out, slamming into the monsters and shredding them to dust like a makeshift flamethrower. Shuru locks eyes with his friends and snaps a warning. What he just did was dangerously reckless. Do not try this at home. His friends stand stunned, the liars already yelling, "Was that magic?" And Shuru doesn't have time to answer. He shoots Ralph a sharp nod to send the pest away, and the cleric snaps to it. He swings his heavy mace and shatters the creature's tough shell. With only 6 foes left, Laird whooped that victory was at hand. Then the whites converged and braced to strike. They redirect their assault at Nesku, and Shira readies winds up another fireball, then freezes as he sees the witch pressed so close to the insects that the flames would catch her too. Neska is hatching a new plan when a beetle lunges at her. One of the Sherus rockets in and shoves her out of the way. He lunges in to take the hit for someone else, absorbing the strike as the insect's claws sink and rip into him. Liar's scream rips through the air, panic shredding his voice as he shouts, "Shira, jump into the river, get rid of this creature." With no choice left, he plunges into the water. His gamble pays off as he rips free from the beetle's grip, but Shira is swept into a raging current. Neska summons a roaring tide of water spirits that surge up and coil around the young man, forming a living shield. Terror ripped through Lyra as she watched Shira being dragged toward the riverbank. The leader of Azure Flash leans in, eyes scouring the chaos for him, silently begging Shira to hang on. Sherry snaps awake, pulse hammering, eyes frantic as he scans for any sign his friends will rush in to pull him to safety. Suddenly a woman's voice slices the silence, imploring him not to give up and to hold on. He hacks the swallowed water from his lungs as the girl's triumphant cry slices the air. He's alive. She cuts him off, snapping, "Have you never seen a fairy?" And he freezes, surprise nailing him to the spot. He explodes into a breathless question, "Are you really a fairy?" He's never seen one and can hardly believe she's actually real. A palm-sized creature with grass-like hair and wings that sparkle in the light flutters up like a tiny dancer, drifting with feather-like grace, then shyly asks Shiro not to stare. Shiro realizes it's rude and blurts a quick apology. She folds her arms and pins him with a stare, daring him to say one more word. Confusion knots his voice as he stammers that he's glad to meet her, and the tiny fairy bristles, snapping that this is nothing like what she expected. She shook her head, eyes blazing, and demanded to know what had yanked him from the waterfall. He bellowed a warning about the danger of plunging into hot water, and if it weren't for her lightning-fast aid, everything could have ended badly. Shura shoots a quick, polite thanks at his imbo. The fairy plants her hands on her hips and snaps, "Why were you in the river?" Like it's his newest bizarre hobby. He rushes to deny it, insisting it was all because a long tail suddenly unfurled. She listened, shook her head, and snapped, "There's no mistaking it. Monsters attacked you. Mock him as weak, and you've dared fate to tear you apart." She leans in and asks where he's from, and he replies that he hails from a small town called Norwich, located to the west of where they are now. Her eyes snapped wide as she echoed the name. Stunned, Norwich is a city teeming with people. She grips his arm and begs, "Can you take me there?" The young man gapes at her, thunderstruck, unable to fathom why she's so fixated on it. Hit her with, "Have you ever been to this city before?" The fairy knits her brow like she's asking, "So that's a no." Rob nods and agrees to take her, but first asks if she has any friends in the city. The fairy nods, eyes glittering. "I really know a human guy," she insists. She beams, gushing that he stood just a hair taller than Shura. His eyes stopped you in your tracks, his smile disarmed you, and both his hair and irises wore the open sky's blue. Curiosity blazing, she leans in and fires at Shura. "Do you know this man?" He snaps that sharing a race doesn't turn strangers into friends, then demands, "What's your name?" The little fairy skids to a halt, eyes darting as she wrestles for words, then sheepishly admits she has no idea what to say. She tells him that before meeting Shura, this woman was the only person she'd ever met, so she simply gave her the easiest name to say. She spat his name, Cumin, and Shiri's curiosity flared. Who was he, a seasoned hunter or a wandering adventurer? He hears romance lacing her words about him and snaps, "Were we a couple?" The fairy flicks his forehead with a delicate finger, her face twisting into a grimace as she snaps, "Are you perhaps a fool?" Rumors roared that a fairy and a human could never be together. In truth, they were just two very good friends. Shiro beams and declares they're probably best friends, and the fairy chirps a joyful agreement. She snaps her answer into the air with absolute certainty. The boy pauses, mulls it over, then asks if she knows this forest well. Seeing her finally at ease, the fairy beams, agrees, and reveals she was born and raised in this giant forest. Shura seizes an opening and lays down a bargain. If she guides him through this stretch of forest, he'll whisk her away to Norwich. He leans in and fires the question at her, "What do you think?" Her eyes flare with joy as she asks if he's really serious, will he actually take her to the city, and she seizes the chance, eagerly agreeing to his plan. She swears she'll shield Shiryu on the way and dares him to witness what she's capable of. She shoots her hand up and conjures a blade-sharp gust that slices the air and fells several nearby trees. His eyes bulged at the raw force of her attack as he blurted, "Was that really necessary?" She strikes a defiant pose, plants her hands on her hips, admits she can't control her magic yet but shrugs it off, strength is what matters, and then she shows off, flexing her arm muscles like a dare. She bragged, chest out, that they'd just been ambushed by a swarm of rhinoceros beetles, and she'd single-handedly sent the whole swarm scattering. Shira freezes as the truth slams into her. She was the one who harmed the insects, and she cries out that the mystery is finally revealed. Shira thrusts out her hand, declares they've sealed a deal, and at last reveals himself as Porum. The girl taps her chin, laughs that the name sounds strange, then agrees to accept it. She grins and spills her full name, the words filling the space between them. He declared he'd be her commander from now on, but Petty crossed her arms, pouting that she didn't like it, and cheekily told Shura to start calling her Cheek instead. He explodes into laughter and shoots back, "Yes, boss," to cheer her up. Petty flashes a grin and begs, "Say it again." Shira bellows for her boss, and the fairy, delighted, twirls around him midair. Shiryu locks eyes with her and asks, "Do you like it?" Then he redials her boss. Petty scowls and demands to know why he's saying that, and the young man grins, joking that's how subordinates usually speak. One relentless girl keeps protesting. She tells him she doesn't like it and asks him to stop. He tosses out calling her captain. She cuts it off with a sharp, absolute no. Still gasping, Shiro crowns her mighty and swears he'll obey every order like a grateful servant. She saved his life. She snaps she isn't fond of being treated that way either. Night swallows the sky and they huddle by the campfire. Petty stares into the flames, wondering if Shira aches for her friends. He throws his gaze at the starry sky and admits he does this almost every night because the stars feel like close friends, and as he chats with them a cold knot forms. His true friends might be searching for him right now. Spellbound, Petty Declure already vowed to help him track them down. She hurls questions like declarations, acting as if the answers are already hers. The fairy snaps that, as leader, she must shoulder this duty. He must cede every decision to her. She asks the boy if he's hungry and sees he hasn't eaten a thing all day. Patty slammed his hands on his hips and declared that now he was under her wing so she'd be the one to feed him. A blinding flash erupted before his eyes. He blinked frantically, and when his vision cleared, he found Shira standing stunned. He asks something wrong, not hungry, but then freezes, stunned to discover she can stash things too. That twist makes everything wildly more fascinating. Patty slams a huge, blazing sigil into the air, its hum thrumming with raw power, as a portal yawns open before her, and she, with a fluid sweep, plucks a fruit from its shimmering mouth. Her eyes sparkle with joy as she stares at Shura, who stands frozen in awe and admiration, and the fairy cocks her head, an intrigued smile tugging at her lips as she asks if he's ever seen anyone use the inventory skill like that. His heart rockets. Patty has the same rare gift. He opens his mouth to ask, but she reads him and answers before the question leaves his lips. She trilled, voice light and cocky. Fairy folk swarm with special powers, and most of them can stash anything in their own little pocket of enchantment. She keeps rifling through her supplies, hunting for what she needs. She rifled through unseen nooks, plucking out odd trinkets with careful hands until she finally unearthed a tiny, sparkling glass vial of golden liquid that glowed in the light. Then the fairy flashed a sly smile and slipped it into Shirup's palm. He lifts the bottle to his lips and sips. A pleasant warmth floods his body, and an instant surge of pure joy crashes over him as he bellows, "This meat is unbelievably delicious." Petty proudly boasts the dish is wonderful because she made it herself. She swears the meat's irresistible. She did every step by hand, and urges Shiro to eat his fill since her supplies are overflowing, so there's no point holding back. Someone has to hold watch through the night so nothing sneaks up on them while they rest. Patty, confident but clearly worried, orders Shura to drain his drink and go to sleep. Shura feels the drink wash over him, the booze tugging at his eyelids. He offers a grateful smile, falls into step without protest, shutters his eyes and lets himself drift into rest. The next morning, Petty casually perches on the guy's head the moment he wakes and instantly launches into a barrage of chatter. The forest roils with different peoples. Some welcome us like old allies, others force us to tread with guarded steps and sharp eyes. She spots vicious orcs and towering, terrifying ogres closing in, brutish and slow-witted, yet monstrously strong and savage. Patty, hand darting with excitement, urges him to look over there, where elves shimmer like living song, mysterious and in perfect harmony with the forest. She confesses curiosity yanked her toward the lands of El. When she crept close, a shimmering shield flared to life and barred anyone from entering or even sneaking a peek, so she finally gave up. As Shira edges onto the road, she strains to hear him mutter that everyone else feels distant and silent. Then he flings his head back and lets out a weary sigh. He pleads for a short breather, his legs screaming from the march, and the fairy crosses her arms, grumbling that he's stopping again before grudgingly agreeing, only if it's quick. They sit down. Petty's eyes snap to a strange flower. She jabs a finger at it and in her trademark flair, announces it's a rare bit bun and warns its nectar tastes bizarre and disgustingly foul. Shira's eyebrows shot up in surprise as the fairy chattered eagerly about how she'd once accidentally tasted the nectar and hated the foul aftertaste that clung for ages. Shira grins, remembering Petty's non-stop chatter, spouting oddball obsessions and blasting everyone with fascinating but totally pointless trivia. He uncovers that long ago, before Patty even appeared, this land belonged to an ancient country called Jinni. The country crumbled where its cities once stood. A savage, impenetrable forest sprang up, the forest of the Jinn. A scowl carves his face as he snaps. Did all this happen in the age of the ancient magical society? Petty snaps, how would you know? That all happened long before you were born. Shur shrugs and shuts the topic down. Hade snaps rigid, every sense igniting as her intuition screams that something's very wrong. Hade's gut screamed, she snapped hide, and hurled Shura into the shadows, no hesitation, no questions. Faint cries ripped through the forest, someone was calling Shira, and the AIA Flash adventurers crashed through the underbrush, scouring the woods for him and for the forest itself. Ralph's loving voice cuts through the silence, trembling with hope. Shiro, can you hear me? Lyra's words tumble out, excitement crackling, and she confesses, raw and honest, that losing him would hurt her to the core. Nesca slams her staff into Rolf, ripping into him for his gloomy words as the warrior wipes tears from his face. He swears with iron conviction that Shiro is still alive. Nesca's smile blooms, she cups his head, calms him with a steady touch, and declares she's fine. She sprinted through the trees, weaving between trunks as she desperately searched for her friend. The moment Sherry catches those familiar voices, he rockets to his feet, brushing aside Patty's complaints as he sprints toward them. She sneers, blasting him as a fool for unmasking himself far too quickly. Shirukanya declares they are his unshakable friends, his closest companions. He bellows, I'm here, and they whip around to face him. Their eyes snap to an empty patch. Keela was gone. A massive bird had swooped down and carried the scout away. Catching sight of Shura, Keela fires at the bird, bolts off, and crumples to the ground. She stumbles and crashes chest first onto Shira, leaving the whole company dumbfounded and unable to grasp what just happened. Tears streaking down her cheeks, Keela grabbed him in a fierce hug and choked out that she'd thought he was dead, then yanked him closer, laughing through sobs that he's alive and swearing she'll never lose him again. The group drops into a bow before Shirey. He declares he's fine and bids them to rise. Regret burned through Lara as she choked out an apology, confessing she vowed to protect him and had failed. Nesca flashes a grin, quipping that he's saved her life twice now, and vows she'll repay him. Shira cuts in, declaring he's safe and already back with his friends. That's what matters, and the group immediately explodes into an argument. He barges in, blurting, are they my friends? Lyra falters and stammers a little, then forces out, yes, they are. Keela grins and declares their friends have a blast together, even with their slightly strange leader. They tease Lyra and erupt into laughter. Roland confesses he feels like a corn guardian who's come back all alone. Shira shatters the silence, admits he's not entirely alone, and throws Patty into the spotlight. They crouched behind the gnarled tree, breath shallow, while the life affirmers gaped, disbelief freezing them in place. Shiro declares she's a fairy, his guide, the one who pulled him from death's grip, and he owes his life to her. Their jaws dropped and they bombarded him for details. Fairies are near mythic, seen so rarely they're spoken of like legends. Like ghosts, they barely communicate with other races, and Shiro turns to Petty and asks if it's true. The fairy's reply crawled out like molasses. You can't leave our territory, that would violate the rules. Shur grinned and said he'd pictured the guild teeming with fairies the moment he heard its name, Blessing of the Fairies. Petty spat, fury coiling in her voice, why should we share our gifts with people? And sneered, maybe some fairy wants to bestow a blessing on someone herself. Whenever Neska's stumped, she hurls sharp questions that corner the young man and send him scrambling for an answer. Confusion clouded Strizhnik's eyes. The wizard burst forward and stepped in. She drops the bomb that fairy blessing isn't a blessing at all, but a potent liquor brewed only by the fairies themselves, the ones called fairy girls. She whipped to Patty and demanded, is this the drink you prepared for him? Patty the fairy gleamed with pride and nodded, I made it for him. Neska's voice trembles as she blurts, did he really drink it? Shira's gaze snaps between Lur and Neska, frozen, unable to meet either of their eyes. When the crowd swarmed Pepper, hurling non-stop questions, did he really devour the fairy handmaidens? Whispers ripple, did Shira really gulp down the fairy drink? A single glass could buy a whole castle. Ralph chains in thunders that Guild Ledgers mark its last sale as 200 years ago. Shur gapes as he realizes just how rare this drink truly is. Petty snapped that she'd handed it to him, he's her subordinate. Confusion tore through the warrior, while Stella shrugged it off and fixed her cold gaze elsewhere. She warns it's a long story. Shira spills every wild detail to her friends, and a fairy swoops in to save them all. The liar strides forward and hurls a raw thank you at Petty for saving their friend. Liar's voice cracked with fierce gratitude, as he swore he'd do anything to repay Petty for saving his friend. Shira steps forward, eyes blazing, and asks to help them hunt someone down. The Fair Eyes' clues were barely a whisper, yet they dove headfirst into the search. With the whole party finally assembled, they resolved to march straight back to Norik. A few strides later, the city of Shura towers ahead. Patty's eyes flare as she jabs a finger and shouts, this is where people live. It actually points to the sorcerer's corrector. The sorcerer snaps, hammering home that it's specifically about the city. Neska declares that settlements go by different names depending on their size. The fairy echoes those words and nods, saying she understands. Lyertal Shiru has endured the brutal grind of being a subordinate. Howdy's gaze locks on a distant figure and he snaps, who is that, as he and Shiro stride up to Anawites at the entrance. The little girl trembles, Shiro's concern snapping him into action as he asks why she's here. Anna barrels in, sobbing, and grabs him in a crushing hug, while Stella steps forward, radiant with the relief of his return. The Blue Flash crew roared their goodbyes, and Anna's mother saw Anna hadn't slept a wink all night, worry for Shiro carved into her face. He reaches to lift Anna for carry, but Stella clamps the little girl to her chest and refuses. She'll be too big to carry soon. I want to hold my daughter while I still can. Shiro sees the exhaustion on Stella's face and tells her to warn him the moment she starts to struggle. She snaps back, stubborn as stone, that she won't say a thing or let him step in. Stella roared she would never hand Anna over. Anna is her daughter. The magpie escorts them home, bids a warm farewell and wishes them a good rest. Just as he turns to go, Stella halts him, exclaiming she forgot something. She beckons him into her home. Shur bursts back into the store, jaw dropping as he stares at the pie and wonders how massive it's grown. He leans in and asks which houses the fairies live in, and she snaps that they build their homes high in the trees, perched where monsters can't reach them. She yanks the conversation off course, and Patty leans in, asking Sherry if he still remembers their agreement. He snaps yes and swears he'll help her find a friend. They laughed. In a town this tiny it wouldn't take long, so they leapt at the chance to start the search the next day and sealed the plan with a cheerful fist bump. Shur leans forward, the flavor still electric on his tongue, and asks the fairy if brewing the delicious drink she gave him is difficult. Petty brags honey's simple, but getting it turns into a brutal battle. Memories of Bidex's last strike, the one that nearly killed her, slam into her. Mid-sentence, Petty hears a zipper. The young man yanks open his backpack, brandishes a jar of honey and asks, will this do? Petty nods, baffled. How did he even manage to find honey? She leans in, surprise lancing through her as doubt creeps in. Is this really honey? Her shirt gleamed pristine, so fresh it seemed plucked straight from the hive. The fairy plunges a fingertip into the jar, tastes it, and a grin of pure delight instantly spreads across her face. Grinning, she proclaims this honey will make her dish even tastier, and Shiri lends in, curiosity flaring, is it really true? He snaps it's time to rest. Sleeping on the forest floor left him numb from head to toe. Morning breaks, Shira dozes on the couch with the fairy snugly perched on her head, then Anna explodes into view. He yanks her awake, shock cutting through him as he snaps, "Why are you here?" She answers that he told Stella the store would be closed today. The little girl beams and declares, "I brought some food." Enchanted, Honest barrels forward, lanes in and snaps, "Who's the girl sitting on my head?" Sure throws her into the spotlight as Petty, his new boss. Petty shimmers as a bona fide fairy, and Anna's eyes wide and voice dripping wonder asks, "Are you like the fairies from the fairy tales?" Petty demanded, "Who's this child?" The young man met his stare and said, "Anna helps me in the shop." Abruptly, the fairy pivots and presses Anna about a man with blue eyes and blue hair. Anna shakes her head. She's never met anyone like that, and Petty's smile dies. "Come on in, Anana, and I still haven't met every face in this city." He's tiny, so he'll be easy to spot. He urges them to start the search right now and asks Patty if she wants to join. Anna's face lights up and she dives in, eager to help. Energetic, Petty lunges in, eyes sharp, grilling the girl to see if she truly means to help. Hannah nods and the fairy erupts into a gleeful shriek. Shira barked they had to hide Petty first, and Anna offered to tuck her into her backpack. They stow the fairy into the bag with careful hands, and once everything's packed they bolt off to find their friend Patty. Shura snaps open the pendant hanging from his necklace and shoves the tiny photo at several city residents. No one recognizes the face. At the town hall, the elf admits she can't say she's seen it and asks for the name to jolt her memory. Merchant Gerald peers through his wares and shakes his head. The item isn't among them. The dove and the mercenary lock eyes. Neither can say who owns the barn. Schurz gapes at the photo, disbelief burning, as every one of the 27 people he'd spoken to doesn't remember him. Curiosity claws at him. Could Fairy's friend really not be from this city? Petty's mind snaps into place. She remembers him saying he lives in NK. Their only possessions, identical necklaces. I whipped out my phone and snapped Petty's suspension, ready to show it to everyone. Then Senka barrels in, eyes blazing, scouring the place until he spots the guy. And he says he's charged off on another adventure with a company of liars. She snaps, voice slicing the air, demanding when he'll finally stop making her worry. He blurts an apology, but Saint Care shrugs it off, declaring the only thing that matters is that he's whole, then beams and ruffles his hair. Anity's face flared scarlet and Sharon smirked, insisting he's just getting warmed up. Saint Cara yanks the photo forward and flaunts the pendant in it, snatching everyone's attention. Sanker leans in, studying it like a puzzle as a jolt of recognition hits her. She knows she's seen it before, but can't place where. She swears she'll come back if a memory surfaces. He begs, "Will you really do it for me?" Sanch flashes a grin and nods. She's in his debt for the help he gave her before. She calls a bright goodbye over her shoulder, vowing she'll swing by the guild again. Sure blurts, "Are you dating Emo?" Sankara snaps, setting the record straight with a sharp correction. She storms into a showdown with Blue Flash, the crew that set up her friend, and her eyes blaze with a cold, dangerous promise. The young man blurts that he volunteered to go, but Sankara ignores him and strides on. Worry roared through Shira as he clung to the hope that his friends Lair, Nesca, Ralph, and Keela were all right. As she steps away, Anna asks if Petty can sleep in her bed, then again turns to the fairy, hunting for her verdict. Petty hesitates, then relents. She'll stay with the little girl for one night only, while Shira smirks and dubs her a pint-sized, all-purpose fairy. Anna returns home, cradling her backpack like a precious prize, and tells her mom, "Mom, you have to see this." This must remain a secret. Stella's eyes flew wide in shock. She vowed she'd tell no one, then leaned in and asked, "What's wrong?" She snaps, "It's in my bag." She still figured it was just a lizard or a frog, then the truth slammed into her like a thunderclap. The girl yanks open her backpack and a tiny fairy named Patty pops out, beaming as she chirps, "Are you Anna's mom, Stella?" Stella's breath hitched when a fairy who could be her twin, right down to the exact eye color, appeared. Awe crashed over her, but worry for Anna burned beneath her ribs. Patty sprang onto the bed Shara had prepared for Stella and Anna, bouncing with pure glee and exclaiming she'd never rested in a place this comfortable. Stella sweeps in with a steaming tray of tea for everyone and eyes sharp snaps, "Who's that young man Petty was talking about?" Anna cuts into the conversation and you know more is coming. The fairy hesitates for a heartbeat, then Shiro lanes in and presses her to tell the whole story. She remembers the exact moment it all erupted. She slipped beyond her realm and spotted a young boy in the forest, furiously chasing a horned rabbit, a unicorn rabbit. Petty had no clue which tool he'd used, but whatever it was shot the tweet out in a heartbeat. He couldn't shoot an arrow to save his life. Every miss left him on the verge of tears, shrinking into a trembling little child. Patty exploded into laughter, unable to stop as a sharp pain flared in her side. Sick of his insults, she snapped into action and landed a perfect pinpoint strike on the unicorn rabbit. The young man locked eyes with her, admiration blazing, and as if she were a fairy, shouted his question. That was how they first met. After he bit into the unicorn rabbit, he exploded into tears, sobbing and gushing that it was the most delicious thing, leaving the fairy aghast. She had found the dish revolting. Then he choked out that he hadn't eaten properly for several days. The boy, trembling with gratitude, choked out that she'd saved his life and asked her name, but she faltered for a heartbeat. Old wounds flared as she remembered how cruel they'd been, and she vowed she'd tell him everything once he learned to hunt better. As the days slipped by, they started hunting side by side and forged themselves into ruthless masters of the chase. He challenged Petty, "Am I dressed up enough for you to tell me your name?" Joy surged through her and she nearly blurted it out, but the sting of being branded cursed child crashed over her and snuffed the words. Her mouth clamped shut on her name. She promised she'd tell it later. Worry clawed at him, but he swallowed it. This was their last meeting. Petty blurts to Anna they used to be friends. Both were haunted by loneliness, but together the ache lost its edge. The fairy snaps, voice like steel. She must find him to tell him her name and learn his. She confessed she'd talked too much, felt cold drops pelt her, and asked if it was rain. Anna returned to her, eyes brimming with tears. Tears streaming, Anna vows they'll find her friend, and the fairies she'd touched rise and echo her promise. 2 hours before this, Shur burst from the portal in comfy loungewear, towel slung over his shoulder, craving the steaming hot bath waiting at home. He bursts onto the store's balcony, eyes locked as the sun ignites the horizon. Out of nowhere, Ellie's voice cuts through. She calls him and he yells, "Wait, hold on, I'll be down in a flash." Year after year, Shira's eyes lock onto the same disturbing detail. Worry laced Shira's voice as she stared at the warrior's face, swollen and bruised like he'd been struck, and she snapped, "What happened?" Lyra shrugs it off as nothing serious and explains that Saint Kara burst into the guild, storming in with white-hot fury. Lyra barked, "Did you come just to scream at us for dragging Shura into danger?" The mayor snapped, "Yes, I won't pity anyone," and the warrior grinned, "Hit me, it helps." The shadow unleashed a bone-cracking blow that smashed into the deceiver's face. The leader of Azure Flash's jaw dropped at Shira's raw power, and stunned, he invited him to share a drink at the guild. They declare Emo and the guild master are joining the crew. Shur throws back a grin and jumps on board, sure it's the right play. The entire guild flooded into the bar, hoisted their glasses, and a roaring cheer ripped across the room. The lyre kicks off the countdown, and the crowd explodes into one ecstatic shout. Keela, Amal, and May Jonian thrust their drinks skyward. Shura and Lur slam back their drinks in a heartbeat as Ralph studies them with a thoughtful stare, then pushes himself to his feet. Laird leans in, eyes hard, and snaps, "Is something gnawing at you?" Nate lines in, eyes sharp. He didn't like the beer. Shura winces, confesses he doesn't like beer, then fumbles out a rushed apology. Nate shrugs it off and snaps that he doesn't like it either. Amy blurted, "Is it true?" and the guildmaster's steady nod made the answer unmistakable. Heads up, the tiny drink lineup torpedoed every attempt. She admits better options might actually help, but their sky-high price is flat-out unjustified. Keela grins and declares she's choosing wine or cider this time. They wear stone-cold faces, yet a surprisingly pleasant scent clings to them. Ness cuts in, snapping, "Don't expect too much." Shur, tipsy and grinning, slurs a cheeky question, "Is the local wine really just sour swill?" He snorts, joking he's never touched ordinary wine and has only sampled the priciest vintages, exactly the kind of indulgence a wealthy merchant would flaunt. Sheer shot back that he had none on him, but his cellar at home boasted fine wines that went for next to nothing. He fires off an electrifying rundown of the three types, red, white, and rosa, and everyone in the room is blown away. Edsy knows orange wine inside out and points out that every style wears its own distinct personality. Wines explode with variety, some sing sweet, others bite bone dry, some float light as air, others punch with brutal strength, prices swing from wallet-friendly to sky-high. He scoffs at wine connoisseurs who pair every dish with a different drink and proudly reaches for sake instead. Like wine, it explodes into distinct varieties, Jingo and Jume. In an instant, every head in the bar snapped to Shur, and the older adventurer urged him on, shouting, "Go ahead, it's your turn." He reveals his homeland's trade with foreign lands, flooded it with a dazzling array of exotic drinks. The crowd leans in, curiosity crackling through the air, and Shur's grin snaps into place. He sees a perfect chance to cash in. He faces them, beckons them back in 3 days, and swears he'll return loaded with drinks from his homeland for every single one. 3 days later, Shura had transformed, Kong's hair had regrown, and he strode out wearing a razor-sharp bartender's suit. Anna gushes over his killer outfit, and he fires back with an equally glowing compliment about her style. Stella's mesmerized by his appearance, calling him professional, while Shira erupts, declaring he looks simply incredible. Lai bursts in, spots everyone dripping with style, and snaps, "Is Anna helping too?" Sherry tried to block the girl from taking the job, but the girl stood her ground and marched in with her mother at her side. Nesca snaps that everything's ready. She's already summoned the ice into being with a crackling flash of magic. As Keela darts through the room serving drinks, Shiro sweeps in bearing everyone's favorite. Nesca snags a chocolate liqueur, and Keela grabs a bright fruit wine. He shoots her a casual "want a drink," and Anna, cheeks aflame, barely whispers gin. She suddenly confesses she wants ginger ale, and the people around her erupt with impatience, snapping, "When can we drink?" Shiro flashes a grin, thanks everyone for their patience, kicks the event into full gear, and proudly announces, "I'm Shiro, owner of Shiro's store." He swaggered in, boasting he'd hauled a pile of drinks from his store to lift everyone's spirits after the forest tasks, but a few scoffed, no way he had that many. He declares he hauled in a mountain of irresistible snacks to pair with the drinks. A few adventurers huddle and whisper, "Is he an alchemist?" but the rest just shrug and move on. Everyone lanes in, aching for the delicious drinks. The celebration erupts, and her offering sends the guild into a roar of delight. Everyone laned in, hungry for the unique flavors he'd promised from his homeland, when Shira bellowed that every drink was free today and invited everyone to taste to their heart's content. The place erupted into wild, joyous cheers. A young man panics after blowing 3 million yen on purchases, but insists every yen was money well spent, a smart investment. He calls on Guildmaster Ne Mirage to welcome the room, and Ne beams, pouring a warm greeting over everyone present. Roar at them to let loose and seize the night, or hit them with the cold truth. Tomorrow's an early shift, so they have to be ready. Eyes glittering and bellies roaring, the adventurers erupt in gleeful shouts and sprint to order the dishes. The mob swarmed Shura, pinning him in a tightening ring. Then Ne exploded into the chaos and ripped their grip apart. He slams his foot on the floor, his gaze seizing the room, and snarls that if they don't calm down, the celebration ends this instant. When the group snaps into neat rows, Shira meets her gaze and lets gratitude blaze across her face. The first liar asked Sherry what he'd like to drink, jabbed a finger at the bottle, interest flaring in his eyes. The young man smirks and declares with rock-solid certainty, "That's beer in a bottle." Some sly tricksters deliberately squeeze lemon juice into the mix, igniting the flavor. Blue Lightning's leader heeds Anna, squeezes lemon into his beer, and a delighted jolt hits him as fizzy bubbles and a bright, zesty acidity turn the brew into something sparkling and refreshing. He tips the mug to his lips and downs a fearless gulp. Sure grins, says a pinch of salt will sharpen the flavor, and within moments everyone is asking for the same. Visitors erupt in delight. Shira flashes a grin and asks Stella for the bottle sitting to his right. Anna ordered a Mexican drink, exhaustion gnawing at her after she couldn't keep up with every demand placed on her. A young man soaks up the electric buzz as the night blooms into perfection. Everyone around him is roaring with laughter and living it up. Out of nowhere, a newcomer strides forward, flashes a grin, and asks for the strongest drink. Some travelers whisper his name, Alo, the invincible hero of the 16 legends. Sure lanes in, asks if he truly wants the strongest drink, then pushes a bottle of spirits across the table. It's so potent it will burst into flame if you light it. He tips the bottle, a ribbon of liquor sliding into a tiny glass. Alo snorts, grumbling that the portion is pitifully small. Zerka smirks and calls Shira a child, absurd since Shira has lived over 200 years. Shira bristles, indignation simmering at being treated like a little one. She warns, voice sharp, the drink is a brutal 96% alcohol. One sip will send him sprawling. Alo bristled, snapping that he'd never been drunk and demanding to know who dared say it. A young man beseeches him to calm down, warning that a dose that large could kill him. But the traveler, burning to test his strength, flung off his cloak and dared to settle everything with an honest fight right there in the street. Ralph, the humble priest, strides forward and proclaims his name. Alo snaps, her voice slicing the hush. Is the priest going to start the sermon? He sees that Shiro had wounded his dwarven pride. Dwarves gulp from barrels the moment they're born, alcohol coursing through their veins. Ralph keeps his voice steady as he validates Eva's feelings. She gives the go-ahead, and he rolls out his solution like a battle plan. The gnome demands every last detail, and Ralph snaps that he can cast a healing spell meant for poison to purge the fog of intoxication. Ralph swivels to Shura and lays out the contingency. If the drink suddenly strikes Illil down, Shura will pull him back from the brink. Do we all agree? They all swallowed their pride and confessed the drink would destroy him. He tore into battle against the demonic lord and ancient dragons, refusing to yield. At the mention of these legendary foes, a surge of electricity ripped through the crowd, and every voice erupted into a thunderous cheer for the dwarf. Shearer's eyes snapped wide as Elis loomed larger, bellowing for a drink. He slams down a daring bet. If he gets hammered, Shira gets to claim any reward she wants. If he wins, he locks in free drinks for life. Elo thrusts the mug forward, barking for it to be filled to the brim, and Shiro grins, nods, and takes the pair. The gnome drags a lungful of spirits and roars. He's never smelled anything this fierce. Before he even shoves his mother into the crowd's glare, he's already staggering drunk. The little one scarfed down every last crumb, the earthworm gaped in disbelief, and the gnome exhaled as relief flooded his chest. He snaps, "My stomach's on fire," and slams his mug onto the table. He strides up, eyes blazing, and snaps, "Are you drunk?" Shira snaps her head, grins ruefully, and admits she misjudged him. She lost the bet. He roars with laughter and declares the guy now has to treat him to free drinks whenever he pleases. He reels, then topples backward and crashes onto the floor, stone-cold drunk. A young man, bursting with energy, lined in and implored Eldo not to gulp down so much at once. Without that role, his fate teetered between soaring to hero fame or never becoming one, and booze poisoned every move he made. The gnome snaps a nod, and the other adventurers erupt into mocking laughter, crowing they've never seen us this humiliated. After a string of brutal quarrels, booze finally wrecked him. They're squinting at the menu, decoding the drink's name, when one of them smirks and declares it sounds ripped from a spy's playbook. They debate christening the drink Toro Killer Little. Did she ever imagine it would explode into a craze and sweep the entire continent like a raging storm? The guild hall teemed with adventurers slumped and snoring, felled by a boisterous feast that howled the night away. Neska's cheeks erupted into a rosy glow of pleasure as she gasped she'd never tasted anything so heavenly, and Keela jumped in, grinning, determined to grab some of the treat for her friends. Meanwhile, Laratary 80 snaps, "Are you really downing every last drop of Shire's supplies?" Sure pays a steep toll, but every adventure now ignites a fire in him to craft a bold new beer. The liar's grin slices the air, eyes glittering with false admiration as he crowns him a legendary merchant. The young man cracks a grin and says, "If the night's hustle eased some tension, I'm glad." Two adventurers erupt into a slurred argument, then slump into drunk sleep right where they stand. He notices how convenient that is, since Anna often handles the guild deliveries. Killa slaps Shryu on the back, grinning wide as he praises him. "You're one cool guy." The young man huffs that it's already done, and the cat snaps that she barely even touched him. Meanwhile, the liar's grin snaps as doubt tears through them. Why had they all gathered that night? The warrior's eyes slam onto the box, fairy wings are peeking out. She whirls to her and blurts, "Has your friend arrived?" The gloomy boy snaps, "No, I haven't," and the young man smirks, declaring he's probably no adventurer. The fairy chokes out a trembling apology, crushed by how much Shura has endured for her. The young man and the warrior stare at her with aching sympathy. Several days have passed, and there's still no news about Petty's friend. He tore through the city flashing the pendant at everyone he met, but no one recognized it. He plastered flyers on every corner, and it didn't help. Shuru gasps to the fairy that her friend might have already fled the city. Listen, beyond their city, countless other human cities sprawl across the land. Petty pins it at 20, Anna shrugs and shoots back that it's way more. Petty's shoulders sag as a sea of strangers swallows her. Fear clamps her chest, and she can't imagine finding a single friend here. Until Sankara starts pounding on the door, bellowing Shura's name. The young man's eyes snap to the mayor and St. Kara's grim faces, and startled, he blurts that he thinks he's figured out who the man is. She swore she could picture that pendant, tore through the house searching every corner, and at last unearthed something. Shankara snapped open a tiny box and pulled out a necklace. The pendants hit Shiro like a punch to the chest. He recognized them instantly. Mirka proclaims the heirloom once belonged to her great-grandfather, Monorak's very first mayor. Someone demands, "Who's the great-great-grandfather?" Shur fires back, "He's your grandfather's grandfather." Sankar demands to know why they're hunting her great-great-grandfather, and a fairy snaps in, declaring it's all the fallout of her own request. The fairy gasped at the boy's sudden appearance and demanded, "What's happening?" as the boy spilled the whole story to him from beginning to end. Sankara's breath hitched when she learned her ancestor had once been acquainted with a fairy. Petty snapped, "Where is he?" and the mayor blinked, baffled that she'd even ask. The fairy drops a bombshell. Saint Kara is the daughter of her friend's son, their family. Sankar agrees, but Petty barrels on, demanding to know his whereabouts. Sankar stands stunned, awestruck by her relentless persistence. The truth slams into Petty and she gasps, "How long do fairies usually live?" Petty drops the bomb. Her lineage claims to stretch 3,000 years, yet she herself is only 300. The mayor proclaims that living to 100 fills people with boundless joy. She still carries the memory of her great-great-grandfather dying ages ago. Surprise, it's Petty, her mind searing with the memory of how everyone ignored her. Not even her parents loved her. She convinced herself that if she vanished, nobody would miss her. Under a blazing full moon, she shattered the rules, blasted beyond her land, and finally found her friend. For the first time, someone's eyes locked on her and poured warmth and kindness straight into her. He leaped forward to thank her first, grinned, and plunged into games and wild adventures at her side. He hurled himself between her and death, then slipped a pendant around her neck as proof of their bond. It was the first time anyone had given her something so valuable. She devoured every second they spent together. She'd never had friends before, and now she'd finally found true friendship. That friend seized the dearest place in her heart the moment they coaxed tears of joy from her for the first time. She bit back her name when he asked, terrified a single syllable would snap the fragile thread binding them. Fear coiled in her chest. She dodged the conversation again and again, promising she'd tell him later because she was terrified it would destroy their friendship. He never forced her. He vowed he'd wait for the right moment. Now that he's gone, Petty realizes only he ever made her feel at home. Anna and Shiri fix her with aching pity and press. What's your next move? Will you return to the fairies? She admits she has nowhere left to go, then unleashes the secret. She was expelled from her homeland. She shoots her hand up, bearing the mark on her side, and snapping for everyone to stare at the brand on her stomach. She snaps. It's a sign. Among fairies it means walking disaster. She confessed she often wanted to disappear, crushed by the sting of even her own parents' scorn. She lived a fairly ordinary life until rhinoceros beetles swarmed in and settled along the ferry crossing in Nessie. Hundreds fell to their knees praying to the fairies for food, and within moments the fairies swelled in number, multiplying like wildfire. The fairies were anchored to the spot, unable to fly away until the last morsel was devoured. In an instant, every eye and accusing finger landed on Petty, Shia Grossandry. She snarls that they framed her as the scapegoat and swears the beetles' arrival had nothing to do with her. Petty owned up she was to blame, and the curse forced the clan leader to brand her Petty Fulu. They blazed their own trail through life and hurled the truth like a battle cry. She clung to the hope of escaping her fate, but he still booted her out. Patty can't shake how bizarre it all feels. She's certain that's exactly why she saved him. She admits she hoped rescuing that senseless boy would finally win her a friend. A brutal, searing clarity slammed into her. She had been the fool herself. Hannah's face melts with sympathy, tears brimming in her eyes as Patty leans in and gently strokes her head. She pleads with her not to cry. If she does, she'll break down too, and they collapse into each other's arms, sobbing together. Shur closed the gap and blurted, "Can I ask you a question?" A single question claws at me. Does Patty truly want to save the fairies? She fires back an immediate yes, and when he asks if she still thinks that, even after her exile, she bows her head and confesses she owes her very name to the leader, and her parents, who never loved her, still clung to her side. They're still her family. Blood tugs at her, and she rushes to help. Shiro closed the distance, eyes blazing, and snapped, "Let's go save them." Petty presses, "Are you really serious?" He flashes a calm smile and assures her he is. She collapses at his feet, imploring him to save the fairies, and Anna rushes in, voice raw and earnest, pleading with Shira to help. He swears it'll all work out and snaps, first stop, the Avengers Guild. After arriving, the adventurers slip inside and huddle, whispering about Shira, when a young man strides up to the guildmaster and asks her to take down a swarm of rhinoceros beetles. She agrees, saying she understands his request. Doubt claws at him. He balks at taking it on, convinced it's utterly unrealistic. Shuru's been nabbed, and Anna and Petty stand behind him, shoulders slumped and faces hollow with defeat. The guild leader growled that tearing down the rhinoceros beetle nest would be a brutal, near impossible ordeal. If the guild wants in, at least half its adventurers must throw themselves into the case. The boy's heart lurched as the price tag for hiring that many people slammed into him. She snaps that money isn't the issue, they're missing something else, and the head of the guild snarls they don't have the influence to pull it off. Right now, most adventurers are tearing through the forest ruins. If the nests clung to the city's edge, they'd leap to help, but the fairy territory sprawls miles away, so gathering them is nearly impossible. She tosses out a quick apology, then pivots and dashes off to tackle pressing business elsewhere. Refusing to back down, Shura roars for her to stop, and the guy throws out a new idea. Call this a handshake deal, not formal employment. Confusion clouded her face, so he seized her gaze and pleaded that she listen until the very last word. He locks her gaze, unleashes his power, and rips a glowing portal open right in front of her. Nee gapes in amazement as Shur explains this is his unique skill. He grins and lays out the plan. The moment the adventurers hit the ruins, he'll telekinetically hurl armor and gear into motion, making them spring to life and move at lightning speed. They'll wrestle with the bugs for days, but refuse to waste a single second on research. He spins to the guild master, locks eyes, and demands to know what she thinks. May's eyes blaze as she admits the idea is irresistible, igniting fierce hope in the young man. His optimism collapses the moment she whips out a charm with the same storage trick and flips open the inventory. The Strigali gape while Nace booms that it can hold as much as 3 carts. He's seething, rage and heartbreak twisting his insides. Nay chokes out another apology for refusing his request. Without warning, Isla strides in, eyes blazing, and snaps, "What's happening here?" Elo's pulse spikes. She can't shake the thought, did that guy get into any trouble? She leaned in, ears straining for any sound, then apologized. He erupted, shouting that he absolutely must get rid of the forest rhinoceros beetles. Isla Edward froze for a heartbeat, then shook his head and snapped that he wouldn't add a single thing. Shiro's eyes snap wide as he blurts, "You'd actually help me. Why are you offering this at all?" The dwarf's words slam the memory of their argument back into his mind. The boy clings to that memory, while the older one grumbles that he's long since forgotten everything. If you're wondering whether he's even real, ask. Nate just dropped that this is a massive deal. The gnome grinds his axe into a razor edge and mutters, "Don't mistake me for a weakling. I'll handle the biolas myself with ease." Out of nowhere, the liar bursts onto the scene and bellows, "I heard every word." Volunteers from the Blue Flash squad also leapt in on their own. Nate cuts in, brandishing his sword, voice trembling as he warns that the guild rules forbid taking unapproved tasks, and anyone who works off the books will face the consequences. O cuts in, confessing she messed up, and Liar instantly sides with the gnome. Elo's gamble blew up in his face. He lost the bet, and now he's sweating it out, helping Shiro scrape together every coin to repay the debt. Keela bursts out laughing, saying the dwarf spectacularly flamed out and made a complete fool of himself in front of everyone during that argument. Us snaps quiet, and Lair declares his team are true friends of the Tweezers, who will jump in to help for free. Neska from Sarshur drops a truth bomb. If you're not paid for it, it's not a real job. Keela slammed into Shura with a fierce hug and vowed they'd always be there to help their friends whenever they needed support. The young man, heart pounding from their support, thunders his thanks and vows that once they've driven the beetles out, they'll celebrate this victory together. Random adventures explode onto the scene, and the crew clamors, "If we help, do we score extra treats and drinks?" The young man smirked, "Depends," and shoved a dusty bottle of rare fairy meat forward, saying he'd stumbled on it while sorting through his supplies. Eyes alight, the traveler snatches the legendary brew and dives into the buzzing circle of eager tasters, laughing with wild delight. Buzzing with excitement, she swept her gaze around and snapped that this had to stop, ordering everyone to fix their eyes on the ruins as she jabbed a finger at the young man. Doubt claws at her. What proof does he have that it belongs to him? Petty pokes her head out of Anna's backpack. She whipped the item into view, proved he actually had it, and smirked. She'd crafted it with her own hands. Shur explodes, slamming out the question, "Why did the leader leave our shelter?" They gape as the fairy looms into view, swarm the guy and bark, "What's happening here?" He lets out a resigned sigh and confesses, "Patty's my boss. She insisted the early sour bugs be wiped out." The fairy clutched one desperate wish, to save her own, but she couldn't pull it off alone. He was a traitor and couldn't stand against the dangerous creatures on his own. Resolve blazing in his chest, he drops to his knees before the guild master and implores Nea to save the fairies. Tears flood his eyes. She drops to her knees beside him. They cried out for help, desperate to pull Petty's family to safety. The fairy vows that if they crush the beetles, she'll grant everyone a special boon, and she implores Nea to join the fairies' fight. Nathan's on the ropes, grumbling that Shira's been cutting him no slack. They're pinning every fault on her. The guild mistress bellows, "All bronze-level adventurers, prepare for battle." They plotted to destroy the rhinoceros beetle nest. She barked, "Follow me to G-Forest," and the whole team surged forward, brimming with confidence. They push on a bit more until Petty declares they're already there. Shur's breath catches as Petty points to the dungeon entrance and reveals the nest is inside. Petty warns that the monsters there snatch fairies and cage them, never letting a single one escape. A swarm of gaunt fairies flutters at the cave's entrance, stomachs burning with hunger yet rooted in fear. She whirls to Nye and asks if. He felt certainty slam through him. These were the very ruins of the ancient magical civilization the guild had chased for so long. The ferryman snaps that the strange cave has always been here, and their leader thunders that it was built by a very ancient civilization. Nate's eyes go wide and his breath catches. It actually looks like dreams can come true. She whipped out a map, slammed it flat and spread it wide, traced her plan with a sharp finger, then proposed they split into 3 groups based on rank. 6 adventurers from Michael's guild, bent on keeping everyone safe, struck without warning and barreled into the ruins. 17 adventurers clad in gleaming gold sprang forward and obliterated every monster pouring from the entrance. 15 silver-level adventurers stand ready to cut down anyone who forces their way through. She keeps barking at O to stay put, insisting that as an experienced platinum adventurer he must stay razor-sharp and ready the moment an emergency strikes. Shura snarls a warning that he's going to the lair alone, and the gnome bolts upright, shrieking. Nezak's eyes widen in disbelief, and the other adventurers instantly mirror him, bristling with irritation. She tears into the reckless adventurers, then spills every secret straight to the blues. Flash plants himself on guard beside Shiro, Patty, and the others as the whole team swears they'll see it through. Then the plan flips, everyone surges after Alo into the lair, baiting the monsters out of the ruins. The heroes charge into a brutal, do-or-die clash with relentless monsters. She stares at his watch. 2 hours have vanished since they went inside. Hope claws at her that everyone's okay, and then young Nay materializes. He barrels up to her and snaps, "How's the task coming along?" He erupts into booming laughter and hurls the question at Shira, "What does she think of him?" Shouldering his trusty axe, the dwarf roars, "I'm not even tired." She nods fiercely and backs him up. He practically shouldered every single bill on his own. The guild leader slammed her fist, eyes blazing. She'd seen it all herself and swore every single monster lay dead. Froze Shira's voice as O single-handedly obliterated hundreds of monsters. He scoffs at the idea. It's hard to believe and burns with curiosity. Did this monster hide a queen boss as the final challenge? The dwarf swears he knows nothing, and if it did exist, he smashed it to pieces along with everything else. Then he locks eyes with Nay, snarls that he's starving, and demands to know if they brought meat and drinks. Shira whipped around to Patty, grinning, and shouted that this was amazing news. The fairy hesitated at first, then balked, relented, and agreed. The boy lines in, voice urgent, "Will you tell the other fairies?" She's about to answer when a desperate cry for help rips through the air, and Howdy snaps his head toward it. She snaps. Did Shira hear it too? He goes blank. He has no idea what she's talking about. A bolt of inspiration hits her. She shoots to her feet. The alarm blasts. The girl snaps she must leave immediately. Shiru's worry explodes and he bolts after her, and Lyre yells, "Where are you rushing off to?" An eerie racket explodes from nowhere, and a tiny fairy streaks in, collapsing at their feet and begging for help. The monster's razor claws clamp down on the little fairy just as Petty barreled in, primed to fight. She slams to a halt, dread clawing at her. Her magic might hurt the captive fairy. Petty lunges straight at the monster, demanding it release the little fairy, but a beetle slams into her and shoves her backward. Shira hurtles forward, fear roaring in her chest, as Keela rockets onto the monster and yells she's pinpointed its weak spot. She drove her blade into the insect, and the little fairy plummeted straight down. Nesca snaps a crackling spear into being and slams it into the monster, while Patty rockets up and snatches the tumbling fairy from the sky. He snaps, "Are you okay? Rush to the sorceress and thunder your thanks, then meet the scout's gaze and spill your gratitude for their help." Then Lyre whips his head around, searching for them, and asks if they're all right. He and Ralph had just been fighting off a fresh swarm of monsters. The warrior bellows it's dire. Insects keep pouring from the nest, crawling out and swarming to encircle the entire group. His jaw hit the floor. He just watched the gnome demolish them all with chilling ease. One of the adventurers darts forward, shouting he's found a hidden exit tucked at the back of the nest. For years this place lay entombed beneath the rotting carcass of a colossal monster. As guild leader, Nainsis slams the blame onto herself the moment she spots Kidding and Blaine. Petty bellows a warning. If no one intervenes, the fairy will become a dangerous menace. Sherry seized her sleeve, eyes blazing, and begged, "Can I wield the same magic you used before?" Lyra snarled that the foes just kept swarming in, then locked onto a boy clutching a pie and snapped, "What are you doing?" Shur locks onto Fairy and demands they move in sync. "Are you ready?" And Fairy snaps back, "I'm ready." A young man clutches his homemade flamethrower beside Patty. They unleash a blistering blast of flame that incinerates the monster, leaving nothing but drifting ashes. Shock floods them. Their idea didn't just work, it detonated into success, maybe a bit too brilliantly, but the stars are still a long way off. Lyre stares, curiosity burning, and wonders aloud, is this young man actually a skilled magician? Nesca's finger shoots out, slamming down on the map. A colossal monster rips through the clouds, looming overhead with a maw packed full of razor-sharp, terrifying teeth. Lara's breath hitched and she staggered back, while Neska's grin hardened as she declared, "That's definitely the queen." Keela's jaw dropped at the sight of its gargantuan size. Shur hurls the question at Petty, "Can you cast the spell again?" Petty the fairy flashes a confident grin and vows she can and will wipe this pest out without breaking a sweat. Ralph's warning scream rips through the air as the queen beetle lunges, her huge jaws snapping forward. They divided everything and vowed to demand nothing more. Then O exploded onto the scene and tore their pack to shreds. He unleashed the lightning of justice and blasted the monster with crackling, searing electric shocks. Bloodied, the queen teeters and begins to topple as the dwarf blurts, "Sorry I'm late." Shira fires a grateful "thank you" at him, and Eldos just grins, shrugs it off, saying he was just settling accounts. Ages had passed since the dwarf last unleashed every ounce of strength with his trusty axe, the seal, the immortal sorceress's gift, waiting like a coiled thunderbolt. What secret does Eldo's tale hide? Shurka snaps, "Is justice carved into that axe?" Confirmed, plant this seal and the magic of justice erupts twice a day. A memory slams into the young man. His grandmother adored the Steven Seagal action movie, True Justice. Eldos's eyes shot wide as he demanded where the young man had learned that, and Shur spilled the whole story. The dwarf freezes, a wild doubt knowing could he, by some crazy mistake, actually be Alice Goose Grayson. The resemblance slams into him, then a voice rips the silence, Petty. She snaps, "What's happening?" then whirls and locks eyes with the clan leader. The instant the circle fairy burst from the forest. Lara stares, stunned by the sheer swarm of them, while Neska squeals, totally smitten by their cuteness. The clan leader's voice dropped to a gravelly growl as he demanded why Petty had come after being expelled, and why people were now fighting with the beetles. Patty snaps that he shouldn't care, he's the one who kicked her out, so she owes him no explanation. Shuren strides up, names himself to the leader, Shuren, and declares that Patty saved his life. They summoned him to crush the monsters and shield the fairies. The elder's voice cracks as he pleads, has Patty returned to save them. The cursed, once scorned, surge back as the unexpected saviors of those who spat them out. Neska's sudden question ripped through the air. Petty pulled back her robes to reveal a birthmark on her belly and warned the witch that any fairy born with that mark dooms all her relatives to misfortune. The witch's breath caught as realization slammed into her, it's a seal. Neska locks eyes and explains to the sorceress from the guild that this symbol brands anyone who wields terrifyingly strong magic. Petty recounts how, long ago, countless seal-bearers suffered as their power ran wild and began to devour them. That was ages ago. They discovered the truth. Anyone with basic skills could learn to wield magic. Now most of them have ascended as the strongest witches, wielding that devastating power. Some tribes still cower before the seal and can't fathom its purpose, but it's actually a blessing from the gods. The tribe's elder staggers back, jaw slack, as the evidence shatters their sacred legend. Neska thrusts out her hand and offers to teach Petty the magic she learned at the academy, and Petty's eyes brim with stunned, grateful tears. The wizard declared that once she masters her powers, she'll personally charge in to help the fairies next time. Her grandfather, the clan leader, bows his head and, voice raw, apologizes for what she endured and owns his shame as the head of their lineage. The elder drops to his knees, regret clawing at his heart. Petty cuts him off mid-sentence and snaps that her expulsion hurled her into Shuru's path and let her save everyone. The fairy stands stunned. She lashes out at the Ashane elves, declaring they never even knew Ron. Later in Shuru's shop, he leans in and fires the question at Patty. Will she return to the kingdom of fairies to fulfill her grandfather's wish? Petty gives a sharp nod of agreement. Anna bursts into sobs, grabbing her and refusing to let her go. Petty knows people's lives are short. If she stays with them, time will steal them away and she'll end up alone. She came with a single purpose, find Shura, the only soul who truly understands her. She explodes with gratitude, thanking everyone who helped her. Sankara explodes into the room, clutching a yellowed letter she dug out of her great-grandfather's belongings. It's addressed to Petty's friends. Petty shoved the paper into her hands and ordered her to read it. Her friend calls her his best friend. They swore they'd meet again, and then years peeled away as seasons turned and time sprinted past. He gasped that she's touching his hands, they've grown thinner. His legs barely carry him and running's a fantasy he can't have, but in his mind they're barreling through the forest together while she reads. He bumped into an elf who leaned in and said fairies outlive humans, then translated her name, she who learns to cut fate. He savored the name Fulu, uttering it aloud as his pen traced each letter. He goes by the name Sankara, then chokes out a raw thank you to Petty for being his whole life. Anna clutched an ancestral letter that laid bare just how much Petty had meant to her great-grandfather. Petty remembers he was Sankara, her only friend who learned her name, fell headlong in love, had children, and even lived to see great-grandchildren, she says. Tears glistening, Patty declares she's overflowing with joy, because Sankara lived a happy life. Shura explains to her that people's lives can blaze out in a heartbeat, but true friendship laughs at clocks and refuses to be measured by time. He leans in, swearing to Petty that Sankara will always be her friend in her heart no matter what, then gently wipes the tears from her cheeks. The fairy nods in agreement, and even Shankara is struck to the core by how painfully touching it is. The boy pleads with the fairy to remember him and Anna, to cradle them in its heart, even if it only touches a tiny sliver. He yanks a photo from his pocket, a frozen shot of him grinning with Anna and Petty, all three flashing peace signs, the picture giving nothing away. He swears everyone in this photo is his friend, his best friends. Tears brim in Petty's eyes, and Anna, voice cracking, nods through her own tears and declares that they and the fairies are true partners. The adventures of the Blue Flash burst onto the stage. The grinning liar sachets in and proclaims they're all friends, and the meowing quackunks chirp that they're lucky to be friends with Poram. Nesca stepped forward, her gaze hard as steel. Petty snaps, I know her inside and out. Nesca, a half-elf who will outlive humans, declares she loves a lying human with fierce, fearless sincerity. The warrior fixes his gaze on her, and the sorceress declares every moment spent with him will be etched into her heart forever. Nesca hurls the question at the fairy, what are you going to do? Petty flashes a defiant grin and vows she's not afraid of anything, she'll stay with them, since the clan leader never set a return date. Nesca thrust out an offer to teach her magic, but Petty stood rooted, unable to tear herself away. He goads on a hurling crybaby at her like a barb, then confesses he can't leave her. She realizes time runs on another clock for them. She'll only storm back to her kingdom when she chooses, or when age and death finally claim her. He chokes out a nervous laugh and snaps, I'm not that old yet. Anna hurls herself into Terry's arms, and Petty rushes up, grumbling about being blindsided by the sudden hug. 2 months flash by and suddenly the city's most important holiday bursts onto the streets. Lights and banners cascade from every corner, and a rising tide of joy electrifies the air. Shura swore to the mayor he'd help, now he's pressing Anna to photograph every last resident of the town. He and Shankar lock horns with Nakshan, hurling themselves into a brutal, do-or-die clash. A young man brandished a bottle of spirits, called the drink that kills heroes, and bellowed for bets as the crowd clawed and shoved for every item. Sheer revealed the riddle's final piece, a drink so divine only those chosen by the fairy may taste it, then hoisted the bottle bound to the meat. The city proudly boasts that Petty, now the shining star of its tourism, built her success single-handedly, while the fairy flushes and shrinks back when Chiru calls on the crowd to greet her loudly. The auction erupts as the starting bid slams down at 1 gold coin. The young man cranks the stakes up to a white-knuckle level. After it's all over, Sankara and Shiro sink onto a bench in the square, while the guy brags he sold the meat at the auction and roars at the mayor's ridiculous mug on the label. Shankara grinned, saying anyone would leap at a bounty like that. He snagged 50 gold coins for the drink. Shira smiled, promising to replenish the city treasury. The mayor seized Shura's hand, shouting his thanks and declaring that Shura had made it all succeed. Embarrassed bangs his chest, claiming it was his idea, but Patty did all the heavy lifting. Sankar should be thanking her. The man nods sharply, Petty closes the gap and they dive into conversation. Then the fairy's eyes spark as a thought hits and she casually tosses out a question. Doubt claws at her, can Shura and Sankara ever have a child? Words scramble in Shura's mouth, and a dizzy fog drags his senses into chaos. Shankara's face burns crimson as they snap, we're not even together. The fairy blurts that Stella told her about reincarnation, and even suggests the child could bring your friend back, and the room snaps into a painfully loud, awkward silence. People often stage vibrant rituals and jubilant celebrations to kick off family life and welcome children. Sankara recoiled, stepping back, and snapped that they had to pass certain stages and overcome the trials first. Petty slices through the chatter, orders total silence, pins Shur with a hard, relentless stare and snaps, are you refusing? He grins, blurts, let's make a baby right here, then quips, that's already an abuse of power. Stella and Anna burst into view, and the girl blurts, is the auction already over? Shur owns up to having the photo and wonders aloud why she even snapped it. She lit up, declaring she absolutely loved the idea of taking a group photo with everyone, and he grinned, agreeing it was a perfect plan. The city lay without streetlights, but that night lanterns drenched every corner in a soft, warm glow. Sankara ripped Norwich out of the void and forged a city from nothing, with Shirey woven into its very heart. Shira corrals everyone into the shot when a woman's voice slices through the chatter, calling his name. He whirls around and snaps, "Who are you?" She freezes, wondering if he doesn't recognize her. Her face is swallowed by the dim light. The young man squints, confesses he can't place her, and snaps, "Where could we have met?" She storms into the light, snarls "Fool" at Shira and declares she's his grandmother. A bolt of memory slams into Shur. He remembers her and how he'd been dead certain she was alive and would definitely turn up at the festival. Even as Shira set up shop as a merchant, his nights burned with one impossible dream, finding his grandmother. 2 months ago, Sankara swore the witch had appeared at last year's harvest festival. He tore through swarms of insect monsters, shoulder to shoulder with Azure Blaze on that mission. He finally met Petty Full. The meeting hit him like a lightning bolt and meant everything to him. A whirlwind of events swept by, and before he knew it, the harvest festival was back. He hurled himself into the celebration with his friends, grinning from ear to ear. At that very moment, she burst into view and blindsided Shura. He snapped, "What did you just say?" She won't take no for an answer. She drags him into helping his grandmother with the cheese. Anna snapped, demanding to know who that woman was. She insists again she's his grandmother, and the girl freezes. She's far too young to carry that title. She grins, nods, strides up to Shura and flashes a peace sign, and someone turns to Hannah and asks if she spots the family resemblance. Awestruck by the gesture of peace, Shura reels back and declares she can't be his grandmother. The idea ignited in his imagination. Shira explains his real grandmother, already over 80, had become weak and frail. Don't mistake her for a dreamy, wide-eyed girl. She's not that, not even close. Sankara shyly charges forward, shouting, "Risa." The witch returns the call with a smile and asks how she's doing. The young man's jaw dropped when the mayor turned to the witch and thanked her, declaring the holiday a success thanks to Shire's help. Aries stayed ice-cold, eyes sweeping the scene until it hit her. The witch desperately needed her help. He beamed, proclaiming the boy had grown into a fine man, proof those childhood trips to the festivals had paid off. She keeps demanding, "Am I really your grandmother?" and then fiercely insists she is. He fires a test question, "What's your favorite movie?" And RISU snaps back, "Lethal Weapon." He presses, hungry to know her second favorite movie. Yevrius tosses off Braveheart as a contender, then smirks and declares Mad Max. Shur leans in, asks who her favorite actor is, and she fires back with steely confidence, "Mel Gibson." She snapped that his caution was like a tiny RISU, so minuscule it drove her mad. She leans in and asks if he remembers being 7, how he peed his pants on the way home, and she had to change him. Shira scoffs it off as not worth mentioning, then snaps, "Where have you been all this time? Why did you leave without saying a single word?" Arzu locks eyes with him in a gentle gaze, whispers a trembling apology, and pleads with him not to be upset. Patty bursts into the room, panic clawing at her throat as she snaps, "Who are you?" and a crushing aura slams into her. St. Cara grins, joy flaring from her like sunlight, and declares she'll now unveil a true legend. Arisu, the immortal witch, lifts a hand and draws a throng of people around her. Everyone clamors to speak to the witch. Risotto ribs the mayor, calling him out for being far too loud. Sankara apologizes and the witch just shrugs, insisting she's long since grown used to it. The holiday was ripped from her, she wouldn't be able to enjoy it anymore, and suddenly, a glowing magic circle snaps into being, and a sword rockets up from its center. Someone bellows, "This is probably Mel Gibson's legendary sword." Karis blurts an apology, then reveals she'd been meeting her grandson. He slashes his sword in a wide arc, whispers sweet dreams, and watches them slump into sleep. Shura snaps, "What are you doing?" and the witch soothes the young man, insisting everything he saw was a phantom spun by his own imagination. She lunged forward and pulled him into a desperate, all-consuming hug. He recoils and snaps, "Why are you doing that?" Riss snaps that they have to get out now. Shira, bewildered, demands an explanation, but the witch snarls it's already clear and rips open a glowing portal. Arisu yanks him along, vowing they'll return to his home. The portal yanked them into the world of Shira. They plummet from the sky, he howls in despair, and inches before they slam into the house's roof, Risu rockets in and intercepts them. Risu's spell rips them downward through the building, and they land safely on the first floor. Shir staggers, dazed by the sudden plunge. While Ares throws her arms wide and lets out a triumphant laugh at being home, a young man pours steaming tea into a waiting cup. Eros takes a slow sip as a flash of childhood cheer crosses his eyes, but he serves her now with a gloomy mask and snaps, "I'm already 25, not a child," while the witch leans in, sensing the words strangled on his tongue. She agrees with a sharp nod, saying he's loaded with questions and the first one is the most important. He snaps, demanding to know who she really is. Risu grimaced and snapped, "I've already said it, I'm a witch. Isn't that enough?" The young man scoffs that it explains nothing and urges her to act her age. Shira rips open the truth. She lays bare the chaos her absence wreaked on the family and fires a single searing question. Why did she disappear without a word? Rue scoffs and waves it off, insisting witches always have secret reasons she can't reveal. A rough grumble rips from him as he snaps, dodging the answer like this is wrong. Then she's slammed with a blunt question, do you use magic to look younger? She denies it outright, declaring her youthful appearance is the real her now. The bombshell leaves Shura reeling. Arisu reveals the older face was the work of magic. She deliberately altered her appearance so no one would question why she never ages. She leans in, eyes blazing, urging Shira to lock her focus on every detail. Then right before his eyes, his features contort, and he snaps into an elderly man. A young man gapes paralyzed as the girl, in a heartbeat, morphs into a wrinkled old woman. The witch sneers, eyes glittering as she jeers, do you relish seeing the grandmother you remember? Shirin insists he's fine, though confusion clouds his head and a nagging worry nips at his heels. He confesses it's nearly impossible to process, there's just too much going on. Arisu remembers her grandfather Shura pleading with her to always stay young for him, lavishing her with compliments and calling her sweet and beautiful. She vows they'll ignite nights of fire, faces inches apart, raw emotion blazing in every glance. Shiro cuts her off, snatching her arm and pleading, don't say a word about my grandfather and grandmother. Karisu's smile lights the room as she leans in and asks, any more questions? The boy flings open the wardrobe, revealing a humming portal, and memories of those long-ago days crash over Harser. She and her husband were scraping by. They'd poured every last coin into building their house and had nothing left for travel or leisure. She hatched a reckless plan to tear the empty room open and forge a pulsing portal that would link their world straight to Rufaro. Together they charge headlong into countless adventures, devouring every enchanted second of their escape.